Yo, what's up, bro?
Hey, what's going on, crypto bro?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What's going on with you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I said I'm doing great. What's going on with you? I see you're very busy all over Twitter and TikTok. You're teaching just about everybody.
Dude, it's a crazy journey right now. It's just I'm nonstop busy right now, right? Especially with the transition that I'm going through right now. So I'm always learning something new every single day and trying to put out all the information because I'm learning at such a rapid rate, right? Because everything that I'm putting together, right? It's kind of like it sounds conspiratorial, but it's logical. You know, it really is logical. So when you start putting the pieces together, you start seeing how the infrastructure and everything is about to work, especially with the new financial system that we're going through, right? So it's kind of like, oh man, with you doing all your research, right, that you're doing, you're connecting all of these dots too. So shout out to you and what you're doing and what you're putting out to the community, yo.
Nah, thank you, Echo. You've been at it a hell of a long time before I have, connecting all the puzzle pieces, picking up the breadcrumb. And you and I are both underneath the table wondering what type of food is on the table that we're picking up all these crumbs. But nah, man, it's difficult because this market is growing at such a rapid pace, especially within the last 6 months. The information that's coming out, the news that's coming out, the adoption and the growth of this market, it's very difficult to keep up with because you're finding like what you would learn in 1 week now would be like a month of research back then and 2 years ago. So the market is just developing so fast.
Exactly. And it's like, if you caught the front end of it, like as far as like, if you were in let me ask, were you in the bull run of 2020 and 2021?
No, I actually started buying XRP when the lawsuit had taken off. So I got in, I believe it was like no, my first buy of XRP was like November 8th of 2021. I was into Ethereum in 2020, but I really wasn't a serious crypto investor. At that time, I was still very much heavily into stocks. But no, once I got into the XRP, that's really when I started paying attention and learning. So 2021, it was really fearful and boring price action.
Okay, bet. So I got in right, what you call it, like toward the tail end of 2020. So I caught like the front end of like when everything started taking off, right? And so I compare that to what that feeling that we're having right now in the markets and in certain ecosystems, they're already doing that. Like we're already going through our bull run cycle or starting the bull run, right? I think the bull run for, let's just say like XRP or something like that, like we're already starting to see like a growth and acceleration, especially like total volume locked inside the pools and everything. That once what how I see everything is that it's going to start transitioning starting in November because of that whole ISO protocol with Swift. Because that's when Swift goes live, and that's exactly what XRP is designed for, right? Or what Ripple had designed RippleNet to do is to take over Swift, right, or replace Swift, which it will happen, right? It will take some time, but for the most part, it starts on November, and it just nonstop goes from there, right? So for me, it's like what we're seeing the growth of like XRP, like I got in when it was like 30 some cents, right? And I got to see this whole entire movement of us going from 30 to 60 to $1 to $2. Like it's been an amazing journey, right? But for me, I feel like that parabolic phase will happen literally like at November, and it's gonna be nonstop. Like I'm sorry to say like November, right? And I know it's a few months away, but thank God because you still have people are still learning about crypto right now because they're starting to put the pieces of the puzzles together. And so anybody that's looking to do it, this is a great opportunity to start accumulating these assets, right? And although I can sit here and say this is not financial advice, right? I'm gonna tell people, hey, yo, no, it is financial advice. Like, fuck, dude, I'm being fucking serious, dude. I'm in my position for a reason to be an influencer. Look, I'm not a financial advisor, but I see the fucking writing on the wall, yo. And I think a lot of people see the writing on the wall. And we want good for our people. We want good for our brothers and sisters out there. We want everybody to fucking make it. That would, what they call it, the on a spiritual sense, we were known as the angels, the white angels, or whatever they're called. Are you spiritual at all?
No idea.
Oh, okay, cool.
No idea. No, dude, I'm 100% with you. I mean, I got in at 30 cents and I watched the climb. And although this is really kind of my first, action within the market, you really can't compare it to any of the previous cycles because now you're having these institutions start to come in and start to adopt not only from the ETFs, but you're looking at the DTCC looking to acquire things. You're looking at, of course, Swift has been proactively exploring DLT technology. So the institutions are coming in, right? The tokenization of real assets. You know what chains they're looking at. And I say to people all the time, like, I don't want you guys to feel like you're getting in late because prices are the prices now, but we're still under a $4 trillion market cap. This market will go to $100 trillion. The idea that you will be able to tell somebody that you got in at $4 trillion and that growth from 4 to 100, you got to experience it. You're not late. You're perfectly right on time, everybody.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So I tell people, like, get it while you can. Thank God, because once we already started already. We're never going to see, you see all the crypto bros out there that are like, XRP is going to go below $1. XRP is going to go. I'm like, bro, you are never going to see an XRP below $1 ever again. I guarantee you we would sell our souls for that shit.
I hope it does. I'll sell the truck right now. I'll refinance the house if it goes below $1. I hope it. I kind of hope it does. I mean, I can't get enough of these things. But if we could, I'd like to jump into it. And the first part that
absolutely, bro, absolutely.
The first part I would really like to know is really just about you. If you could, I'd like to learn a little bit about your background. Like, who is Echo the Truth? What was your childhood like? What is your story? And what inspired you to start speaking out online?
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, if I get off track, steer me back in the right direction because I have that tendency to just ramble on. Okay, and then in conversations we'll be in Netherlands by the time we end it.
ADHD is a superpower.
It is. I couldn't do this whole entire journey I'm on without it. Right. But I wanted to put that out there first and foremost. But yeah, my name is Will, right? Will Chen, and I'm originally, I was born in Indiana. I'm Chinese American. My parents, they're from Vietnam, right? And I love my mom, by the way. I mean, I'm a mama boy all day long, 100%, right? But my parents owned restaurants as I grew up, and I have a twin sister. Oh, I have a twin sister, right? I gotta remember her. Anyway, I have a twin sister, and they're very supportive of me, right? My mom and my sister are very supportive of me. My parents owned restaurants growing up all my life, so the understanding self-employed business and how that worked was always like a forefront of key things that I feel like that I always needed to know, right? Going into the journey that I'm in right now. So we obviously went through the 2000. Parents own restaurants here in Kentucky, and then with that being said, as my dad started going out to look at different business ventures, he ended up finding a restaurant out there in Texas, and that's where we ended up moving out to Houston, Texas, too. And during that period of time, was during the 2009-2008 market collapse. Anybody remembers that side of things and what happened? A lot of people got liquidated, including myself and my family. It got to a point where actually we were homeless. We lost the restaurant. We lost the house. It's funny because I had a fucking MR2 Spider, right? Anybody remembers with a little itty bitty spider, right? I had a 2001 MR2 Spider, and that's what I was sleeping in for almost a week, bro. Until one of my friends brought me in because, and being in that situation, right? Because I was an adult at that time, right? But so my parents, they were like, hey, you got to go do your own thing. So, and they ended up going out to Hawaii because they ended up getting a gig out there because it's not easy, especially during the 2009, 2008 time when the economy was very terrible. And to be not foreigner, but a person that couldn't really speak English too much, right? Like my mom, she never graduated, middle school, right? She had to work. She came over here from Vietnam during the Vietnam War. My dad had a good education, right? But this is where everything got tripped up because my dad ended up leaving my mom. And that's a whole nother story that goes into my life, right? But with that being said, we were homeless we lost everything during the 2008-2009 market collapse. And when that happened, it taught me a lot of key factors as far as like wanting to understand why it happened, right? Because it wasn't my dad's fault, right? That the market that we lost everything. There was a reason why. So I always kept that in the back of my mind, right? This also plays the transition of why I know right now the whole entire how everything is infrastructured and set up. So going into that, right, after becoming homeless, right, I ended up grinding myself out of it to a point that I became a mortgage banker. And as a mortgage banker, you learn a lot about, about how finances work, how enterprises and, how those global infrastructures work, especially when you work for credit unions and banks, right? And keep in mind, I worked for a mortgage company. That's where I started it out at. It was actually Discover Home Loans. If y'all know Discover, the credit card company, I worked at Discover Home Loans, right? Also know they were a branch of Lending Tree. Well, I started my career there, and then I slowly started transitioning to different mortgage companies, right, to ones that actually paid me more in my commission, right? It got to a point where I ended up ending my career at the credit union, right? So learning that side of the credit union was really important because I knew the FDIC compliance regulations, right? So I needed to learn the NCUA compliance regulations. So then this also plays into the transition that we're going through now too. So everything that I've gone through in my life has set me up to start understanding how this whole entire thing is being set up through this blockchain technology, right? I am one of the first, I am the first person in the state of Kentucky to win joint custody of my son based on the joint custody law that I helped pass back in 2017, the Joint Custody Parenting Act, right? And that was the very first state in the whole United States to have the Joint Custody Act. In my case, was the very first one. And since that, it actually helped pass other states around us. So a lot of people sit here and say they go through family separations. A lot of times, a lot of times it sides with the mom, right? But it wouldn't even give the father an opportunity to be in the child's life. And I was going through a similar situation at the time, and I had to do something about it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit around and just let this freaking system just take me over. I'm going to freaking go out and start being part of the community, rallying so we can get these laws passed, And that's what I did. And so that helped me understand the court system side itself, right? That we the people can work together, right, and actually get something passed. Okay, and so with that being said, it later on led me down to where I am right now, right? Obviously, 2020 happened, and whenever 2020 happened, it all became awakening moment for me, right?
Yeah.
That happened to you. Okay. So with that being said, right, 2020 was where I already gave up my career as a mortgage banker, and I went and transitioned over and started working for a large insurance company, large health insurance company, right? So the finances on that side, understanding that side of things, without having any prior knowledge, helped me understand everything that went on in 2020, right, with the whole entire big pharma, right, and pharmaceutical industry, right? Even though I don't talk about it a lot, that was what clicked to me, because once you the theory is that you have to follow the money. You follow the money, you see how the money trail goes, right?
Exactly.
You find out the problem, then you come in with the solution. The solution has always been blockchain technology. This is where we start looking around and seeing which ones are they? So yeah, that's so I guess that's me. I'm a single father, right? My son and I, we play Roblox. We love to play Roblox. I have a dog named Gizmo and a cat named X.
This is going to be such a great night. I think we find a lot of common ground on a lot of things. We'll touch into that a little bit later. But how did that background eventually introduce you into cryptocurrency or the blockchain space? What was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it was so this goes into my name, right? Echo the truth. Okay, so my best friend at the time, and I say at the time for a reason, right? My best friend at the time, he was the one who got me into mortgage banking. He was the one who got me to, he was one of my managers and everything at the time, and one of my mentors, right? But and a self-made millionaire, and owned a lot of rental properties, right? And understand how the rental game works, because it does work if you set it up properly, like do rental properties and live off passive income off that end, right? Basically, a centralized version of DeFi, right? But with homes. So he understood that side of the game, and I always looked up to him. But whenever I talked to him about Bitcoin back in 2017, he talked me out of it. And I remember that time too, because I was like, fuck, because Bitcoin, bro, I mean, it was super cheap. It was $3,000, right? But he talked me out of it. When 2020 came around, right, I ended up taking out and cashing out my Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac stocks, which are the mortgage securities that they hold, right? The bond they hold for these companies. And I ended up having those, and because I bought it in during like the collapse of when the low end was. And then so whenever 2020 came around, I started looking at Bitcoin again for some reason. And then Bitcoin was in the news, right? Because of the whole thing in COVID. Because COVID, if you look at the chart in COVID, Bitcoin went all the way down to $3,000 and spiked upwards, right? And so when Bitcoin started rallying again, people started talking about it. And I was like, what's this Bitcoin? What's this Bitcoin? Start researching. And I was just like, well, fuck, I can't buy a Bitcoin. I'm going to go buy an Ethereum. Or not buy a Ethereum. I bought a lot of Ethereum at that time, right? Because it was number 2 spot. So I ended up, because I was thinking in my mind that it was a stock, right? Because I didn't know this, I had to do the research on what it was. So then I bought into Ethereum at $200. And whenever I bought an Ethereum at $200, this motherfucker moonshot it. Oh my fucking God. It was my first reaction, because look, it took me almost 3 years to double my stock in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I did that within the first fucking week of me putting in. I literally got in right when it's fucking taking off. If you look at the chart of Ethereum at 220, it was like, psh, it just never fucking came back to 220, ever came back down, right? Now, it's crazy to think about that, right? Because then whenever that happened, I was like, this is not a stock, right? Because everybody was telling me it was a stock. Or my buddy that talked me out of Bitcoin at the time told me it was a stock, it's a scam, and all that stuff, right? He legitimately talked me out of it, bro. But I was like, nah, dude, I'm getting into Ethereum. I think this is something. Ended up getting into it. And then I ended up started researching it and started seeing like, hey, this is a piece of technology, right? And I started watching influencers and stuff like that. But I never stopped researching. There was a nonstop time of my life where I would literally go days without sleep. And anybody that knows that transitional period, that eye awakening moment, you get no fucking sleep. You're just like researching how to use the network. You're just like, my goal was that if this is a new world, how do I get over to that new world and how do I fucking use it, right? A lot of people sit here and say, I like the tech, I like the tech and everything, but they don't know how to use the tech. I'm not trying to throw jabs at them, right? Because it is scary to a extent, but the whole theory was that, to me at that time, I was like, okay, well, they say that if we're going into this new world, if I'm there early enough and I learn how to use it, either I can be a contributor of it, or I can teach people how to use it or something like that, because we're going over there no matter what. And I would take that risk, right? But with that being said, I started because I love to tinker. I love to tinker with things, right? You give me something new, I love to fucking play with it. I like to break this motherfucker, right? And push the fucking limits to it. So whenever I got into Ethereum, I started learning about MetaMask, Polygon, bridging, swapping. I was like, holy fuck. I got into, just one coin, and I figured out that I can get more coins. I was like, what did all these coins do, right? To a point that I was owning all these fucking coins and all these different damn ecosystems. Now, this is the bad part, right? Because although there was a lot of wealth that was made on that end, I got liquidated, right? Because I pushed my limits, right? Not by trading, right? Okay. Although that trading did kind of screw me a little bit. You have to go. Anybody that trades know that your first few trades don't go good, but it's a learning curve, right? But anyways, going back to it, in the network too, there were DeFi's, right, back in 2020, 2021, and I got into Aave and what was it, Terra Luna stablecoin. And so what I did was that I deposited into Aave, my Polygon, right? Because I ended up scooping up Polygon really cheap, right? Because I made money into Ethereum and then rotated into Polygon, right? And used the swap dexes. And so in that case, I took my Polygon and I staked it on Aave, and then I borrowed from it in UST, right? The Terra Luna stablecoin. So I took that Terra Luna stablecoin and I put it on the Terra Luna blockchain and got 20% APY, right? So I'm using fucking DeFi and trying to break this motherfucker. I'm like, bro, how the fuck do I make a money? I pretty much felt like I had a money glitch, right? Come to find out I didn't, because Terra Luna, anybody that was there during that time, it got liquidated, right? Because their stablecoin went insolvent because it was pegged to Bitcoin, right? So, needless to say, I lost everything. Like, legitimately, when I'm telling everybody, I lost fucking everything. I lost fucking everything except for my ISO coins. Except for all of those.
Perfect time.
Those were the only ones that survived, right? My XRP, my XRP, my Stellar Lumens, my XDC, right? Cardano. I mean, every single one of them, Constellation DAG and everything, right? So with that being said, I started doing more research because I could have gave up. I literally could have just said, hey, fuck, you want to what? Lost $500,000. Could have fucking changed my fucking life. I fuck, whatever, you know? But I didn't. I continued to grind, and I learned about the network. And not did I learn about the network, I learned to a point that I wanted to make sure that I knew all the ins and outs of it. And so in order to do that, right, the key to all of this is to get into a community. If you get into the communities, everybody's like, how do I get the gyms? How do I get there first? You got to get into the fucking community. You got to get in. You got to be active. If the community is the one building the ecosystem, where do you think the gyms are going to be at? The ecosystem, right? So we do have these protocols, right? And so inside of the protocols, you're always going to have these communities that are building. Those communities are going to be the front runners to it. So if let's just say if the token itself starts running, the communities in it are going to run 10 times harder, right? So even though, let's just say I have XRP, you know, I have XRP, I have what you call XPR, I have Stellar and all of them, right? I have tokens within their communities, right? And I'm in there and I'm active with them. So with all of that, you know, it made me understand like how this whole entire infrastructure is going to work and how it gets power back to the people, how this wealth transfer is happening, because it's the ones who get in first, the ones who get in fucking early, right? You know, but there's a lot of us, bro. And don't get it twisted. There's going to be people that no matter what are always going to be taken care of. Like I'm going to tell you right now, UBI is happening, right? It's actually going to not just be universal basic income. It's going to be fucking high universal basic income, fucking high. Everybody's going to be good, right? But you're going to have the ones that got in early to help make those decisions because we were able to see things before anybody fucking else was. You know, you got this. Everybody's journey is completely different, right? But everybody's conviction is different, you know. And no matter what, everybody in their own way of how they're setting in this whole entire new ecosystem, or not ecosystem, this new world, right? They're positioned in there for a reason. We're here for a reason. We're talking, me and you are talking here for a reason. Me and Aquaman met back over 3 years ago, and he got me into the XPR network recently. We did that for a reason, right? Everything is aligning for a reason so that, you know, we can, I wouldn't say filter, but so we can make sure that people are in the right way whenever we get over onto that new financial system, because it's shifting no matter what. And not to say in a scary way, it's actually an exciting journey that we're going through, at least for myself, you know, because I've had so many fucking god dang up and down moments, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've lived fucking like 5 lives, because there's multiple lives I lived. Like, you tell me 5 years ago I was gonna be fucking Echo the Truth, running in front of a camera talking to people over the internet. Fuck no, bro. Hell no. Yo, bro. So anyways, with that being said, that is what started my whole entire journey into cryptocurrency and, you know, blockchain, is learning that, hey, if the system is going to change, I want to get into there, right? I always had this belief, one rabbit hole led to another, right? And as I got into different communities, I started to understand that if different communities started thinking differently, but they all they all thought the same, but they had to be led somewhere, right? It had to be kind of like funneled in. And so with me, being a social media influencer, right? I just legitimately was like, oh, after the bull run of 2021 here on TikTok, there were a lot of crypto bros throwing fucking shade, bro, like at XRP, because XRP didn't break all-time high, right? And I was just like, I had my XRP because of everything got liquidated, but then I was like, why are all the crypto bros like throwing shade on XRP if it's going to be the one, my theory was like, it was the same thing like Amazon, right? I was like, why are the government going after it? There's a reason why the government's going after this particular company, Ripple, right? Because of this technology that's building on. So let me dig more into it. And then when I started finding out that the financial system obviously is changing, that XRP was going to be one of the main infrastructure and payment rails, it immediately was like, I gotta fucking get in this motherfucker type ordeal. So that's what got me into the whole entire, I guess, XRP community. During that journey, I've been, I've had my ups and downs and highs and lows in the community, to a point that, we all, it's not saying we all move on, but we all evolve our mindsets from just one community and thinking that it's going to be a multi-chain ecosystem, right? And thinking about how everything's going to be multi-chain is the biggest thing, I say, in my opinion, key to all of it, because a lot of people are just one, like, I made no pun intended when I say it like that to my name, but like, there are people that are just in an echo chamber. And for me, it's like, echo is my name, and I echo the truth out to everybody, right? And because my buddy back in 2020, right, that told me not to get into crypto, I try to tell him about crypto, right? And I try to tell him about everything that's happening in 2020 wasn't real. I was like, yo, bro, this is not real. I was like, this is a distraction.
I just want to wake you up.
And because I did that, right? He was like, because I did that, me and him got in a really bad argument, to a point that he said, he's like, Will, he's like, you think you're echoing the truth, but you're not. You're just in an echo chamber. Get out of the echo chamber. And I was like, that's my motherfucking name right there. I'm gonna make you
eat it. You're gonna eat it now.
Exactly. And it wasn't until I had my because I had multiple best friends at that time, right? One of my best friends, my downright mentor when it came to like, training, because I used to train in jiu-jitsu and do boxing, right? And used to weight train. And his name is Brandon, and he got into crypto back in 2013, right? Now, he's the one who actually helped me wake up, like had me question everything, taught me about silver, right? Had me going down a rabbit hole of silver and everything. Well, Brandon, he's no longer with us, he's no longer with us anymore. But with that being said, because he was the reason, like the main reason why I kickstarted my whole entire career as being Echo the Truth. Because when I told him about the story between me and my other homeboy, right, he was like, "Yo, get on social media and become Echo the Truth and just fucking go at it." Started YouTube, started TikTok, and I should start making content about XRP, cryptocurrencies, and everything, right? I just throwing it out there like what I knew, because nobody wanted to hear me out here in my real life, because they thought I was fucking crazy. So I was like, hey, somebody's going to listen to me. And I'm going to find out, who is going to be. I'm going to go on this this camera and just say whatever I want to say. And whoever wants to listen to me, they can listen to me. If not, then hey, don't even worry about it. I'm going to tell you right now, I know a lot of shit, right? Sounds fucking crazy, but I've been more right than wrong, especially during this past fucking 5 years, right? Because I still keep on, no matter what, I always keep on questioning, right? Sometimes, I wish I would have, questioned things sooner than later, but I'm happy I questioned them regardless, right? But with that being said, shout out to the TBDN community, right? The digital banking network community. They're part of the XPR ecosystem, Proton ecosystem, right? Because the whole Proton ecosystem is activating right now, right? It's activating. It has to be where it's infrastructure that's going on right now. everybody, a lot of people are excited right now, especially over on X. But XRP is going to have its time. Don't worry. Okay, we're going to come back for XRP here for a little bit, right? But with that being said, make sure that you move over to metals, right? But yeah, that's what got me into the whole cryptocurrency ordeal. Start meeting like different community members. I went to different events, right? Because getting into the community requires me to get out and learn and meet different influencers and stuff. And shout out to Zach Recker, right? Because he's the reason why I started coming on TikTok. Because bro, the crypto bros on here, bro, man, dude, they would go after fucking Zach all the time. All the time.
Speaking of like events and communities, I remember you posted something. This must have been maybe 2 years ago, right when the Ripple XRP was declared not a security, and they threw a party in Manhattan. You were there. I was there. I know that you posted a video. I actually met, it was the first time I met David Schwartz that night and Coach JV. I remember Coach JV was there, and I had a conversation with him. But I remember you posted something that night, and I was like, to my buddy, Crypto Cuzzy, I was like, I got to meet this guy. And I never had the opportunity to meet you. I couldn't find you, but that party was fun. That place was banging.
Are you talking about the New York Ripple party?
Yes.
Yeah, bro.
Yes.
That was a good party. I drove from Kentucky to New York.
Oh my!
Because of that party.
Oh
right?
My!
And I wanted to take my son because my great uncle lives out there. And so it gives him the experience to meet him at the same time as my son loved to do Space Invader hunting. Like you'll go around looking for Space Invaders that are on walls and you scan them and then you get points on your phone, right? Like there's this guy that legitimately goes out to major cities and puts gigantic Space Invaders that you just scan on your phone. And it's kind of like a video game. So my son, I took him out to New York City to go do that. And so it gave us the opportunity to do that. Too bad. I'm sorry that we didn't get to meet out there, right? But I mean, that was a badass party. I mean, a lot of people threw shade at it because they're like, "Oh, XRP's price to the moon, yada yada." I'm like, that wasn't the point, bro. The point was that freaking XRP is considered not a security. Shit, dude.
They had Kravitz playing there, but no. To just touch on the idea of a community, guys, being a part of a community in this ecosystem, in this market, is dire. It's so important. I don't know how you could do it alone. Even when it just comes to asking simple questions with a community of people that you trust or people that are sharing research with you, you can only spend so many hours behind the computer, behind the phone, watching YouTube videos. When you have a community of 100 people, a couple hundred people, they're also sending you information. You're all learning together. And one of the really things that I really liked that you said was your mention of this financial reform, right? What ultimately questioning traditional financial systems, and are we really seeing what we're seeing? So with that being said, you've been outspoken about the need for a global debt jubilee. What does this term mean to you personally?
Bro, it means a complete reset of the whole financial system.
Talk to me about it.
Boom. Like the theory of Nasara Gasara, that type of shit. Like when I read into the Nasara Gasara, I'm not gonna lie to you, I thought it was a fucking fairy tale too.
I don't know what that is. That does sound like hocus.
Okay, no, so you're good. So the Nasara is an economic, it's just national economic reform that was actually supposed to happen back in 2001, right? Whenever the Twin Towers went down. But the reason why it didn't happen was because they had to stop. They had to put some things right in front to stop everything from happening, right? Because originally it was supposed to happen back then. That was the theory, right? With that being said, it would reset the whole entire global economy, right? And it was a theory that would happen if they were to, if that were to have happened, right? But it was blocked off by certain political figures. Let's just put it that way, right? And they incorporated, blaming other countries for it, right? Well, with that being said, if that were to happen, right, which I believe it will, right, it would be a debt jubilee where they would forgive all debt around the world, right, or all major countries or whatever, a big agreement. It's not something that hasn't been done before, right, in past histories, right, because a debt jubilee has happened before. It happens I believe it's like every 50 years, right, that's supposed to happen. Don't quote me, right? But this is the research I've been doing based on with the information that the U.S. debt clock has been giving me. because that's what I've got really known for, was covering the U.S. debt clock and that information. Because the U.S. debt clock to me has always been the key cornerstone to, basically my existence of as a social media content creator, because I was known as the guy that covered that information and tying it in with blockchain technology, right? And whenever it started telling us how the new system was going to work, putting us secret images and having this question about it, I was able to connect the dots. Because with me being I believe I'm the only one that has all of the U.S. debt clock images in chronological order. Like I have them all saved in chronological order in my notebook, right? And that basically tells us where we're at in the timeline, right? Because everything, this whole entire system is what they call coded, right? Because it's all money plugged into different API systems. And if you put all the API systems put together, add a smart contract, you'll eventually be able to figure out what the issue is, and then you can start solving the problem, right? So that's where if we had an issue already with that, then we can reset it, right? And we can reset it in a way by using blockchain technology to do it in a constructive way that not only does it reset the system and not cause a panic, right? But it gets back to the people that it rightfully is so to, right? This is where, a debt jubilee would also this is where the connections of, if you know what a straw man theory is, the straw man theory where each of us are entities, and our social security numbers on our birth certificates are all tied to a bond. That's, anybody that, if you understand what that is or go down that rabbit hole, you'll know that.
I don't know what the heck just happened. What just happened to him? He was cooking something. This guy was cooking something. Ooh, how easy he was cooking about the debt jubilee. Where'd he go? Absolutely sick. Echo. Who took him out? He got cooked. See if I could get you back in here. I can't invite you. Can you request? He said I got cooked. What do you mean? What do you mean? If that's the case, we're going to have to take this private and finish this conversation. The rest will have to get uploaded into YouTube. If that is the case, if I can't have you on, we're going to have to go private. See if you can request. I don't know what just happened, bro. That's absolutely sick. The account is restricted. Okay, brother. We're going to end the live. You and me are jumping into this privately. Everybody else, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to jump onto YouTube to watch the rest. TikTok, the haters are coming after him. All right, Echo, I'm going to talk to you real quick.
So, yeah, man, I do spend a lot of time over on X because, I love TikTok. I really do. But, obviously there's a big, massive community over on X. And, I learned very quickly, if I didn't expand out my platform, that whenever they canned me, if I didn't have a secondary platform, it would be kind of like, it would suck. So, unfortunately, this is not my original account. This is actually my third account. But my second account was my biggest account. So that one was when I started making, towards the end of that account, I started making the transition over to X. And, it's been one of the greatest things I've ever done. Well,
yeah, dude. I wasn't aware that you had gotten canned for a couple of accounts, but as far as I'm aware, the haters are going to sit in your lives as well as mine, and they're waiting for those slip up moments where they go, "I gotcha." Just because you said something that kind of contradicts their coin, there really is a sense of tribalism. Kind of a shame, but that is one of the friction points of early stage crypto adoption, and I think that we both kind of touch on that sense of tribalism.
Yeah, I hate the fact that there's so much tribalism. And I was actually talking about this information earlier with a good friend of mine, and he's part of the XRP army, right? And that whole entire community. And his very first crypto was XRP, right? And with good reasons, right? There's a lot of tribalism that goes around in that community or that part of that community, right? Um, and the reason why I bring that up is because I'm talking really heavily on the metal and XPR ecosystem and trying to let people understand and know. And then it came to my realization that the real reason why a lot of people don't talk about that ecosystem is because a lot of us have come on this spiritual journey. And a lot of us started going off of what people either said or we looked at these diagrams, right? You've seen them, the ISO 20022 diagram, the QFS diagrams. None of them have XPR or the metal blockchain on there. So it's kind of like if one of those hidden in plain sight blockchain, as long as you do your own research, you'll see. And, the reason why I bring that up is because for the better part about a little bit over a month now, I've been getting so much negativity from the people that are diehard XRP community members. And whenever you're trying to explain to them, hey, they're actually working together, right? They actually empower each other. They hate the fact that they're not the only one. It almost reminds me like Bitcoin maxis, right? But it's not all of them. It's just a lot of them, tend to be in that kind of spectrum. Hopefully in the future, everybody will see that it's a multi-chain world that we're going into, and they all work hand in hand together. And all the haters that are out there that are throwing shade, saying that their coin is better. Like, look, don't get it twisted. I still believe that XRP is going to be, it's still an amazing, it's an amazing cryptocurrency, right? For global settlements and what it does on the ledger. But, to sit there and say that it's the all-in be-all is not the case, right? Same thing with Bitcoin, right? Ethereum or any of those other cryptocurrencies, right? They all work hand in hand together. And, what I also found out is that like a lot of haters, especially like when you're on your platform too, and you're getting a lot of kickback from all these negative Nancy's out here. A lot of those people, the only reason why they're either in the live or they're throwing shade is because they want to be relevant. That's the only way they can be relevant.
They're watching you, waiting for you to say something.
Exactly. It's like, really, bro? They got to stay relevant one way or another. And the thing is, they can't do what you can do, right? Like for real, they can't do what you can do. They can't do what I can do, right? So the best thing that they can do is just scope in the background and try to pull that negativity down. It's really, I don't affiliate with that stuff anymore. I'm at this point where I'm like, look, man, I'm on a much higher frequency now. I got other things I have to take care of. The last thing I got to do is just focus on, individuals that can't see what I see.
Well, we can absolutely jump into this whole XPR thing. I've since the last time that we talked, I've had a couple of questions myself, kind of just watching your development and your perspective kind of grow in the last couple of weeks. If I could, I'd like to jump into some of your tweets that had me a little bit confused. I'm sure as well as some of your followers and maybe even some of mine that are kind of questioning where exactly do you officially stand with this. One of the tweets I'd like to talk about is on 7/6/25. You said that you sold all of your XRP for XPR, and then on 8/18, which was 4 days ago, you said that XRP will flip Bitcoin XRP to $10,000. What exactly is your position, your holdings? What was up with the I sold my XRP for the XPR?
So this is what I had to tell people is that you ever watch WWE wrestling?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, that everybody plays a role in the world, right? That has influence, right? They either play a heel or a face. Sometimes you got to play the heel in order to get the masses on to look at other things, right? And it's not trying to hurt anybody by no means, right? But if you do something spontaneous, they're going to question that, right? Now, did I sell XRP? Absolutely, I sold XRP, right? Now, did I sell my whole bag? Absolutely not, right? I hold a lot of XRP, especially in Fuzzy, right? Because I do believe in Fuzzy. I believe in the project. I believe it's tied in much deeper than a lot of people anticipate. With that being said, because I hold so much of Fuzzy, the amount of XRP that I did swap my over to the XPR ecosystem, it doesn't hurt me by no means because I've already, I've already multiplied that bag already doing so. But even whenever XRP runs, Fuzzy will run too, right? So I did that strategistically for myself, right? Now, I don't ever encourage anybody to do what I do, right? Obviously, I'm an influencer, I'm a KOL, I'm a person that everybody watches, right? But, people make sure they do their own research. And with me putting out that tweet, right, I helped a lot of people like question, like, why did Echo do that, right? In that case, people start looking into metal, right? Start looking into the blockchain. They start doing their own research. There are some people that they legitimately did throw it out there, like going on bigger influencers live and saying, hey, Echo did this, Echo did that, right? Which is my whole entire intentions was to stir up the community, right? Because there's nobody I'm going to take it back. Out of all the influencers I know, I'm the largest influencer that's talking about this other ecosystem. But I want more of them too do it, because the whole entire idea of why we're in the position we are in is to bring attention to the masses, right? And if none of the bigger influencers are covering it, there's no way that, or not the way, a lot of people are going to miss that opportunity. I'm not saying there's no way. I mean, people are going to, the system is going to go live regardless, right? So with that being said, I wanted to be able to wake up some individuals from the larger influencer community, right? Which I got a lot of negativity for, because people don't realize that, when you're a larger influencer, right? When you have, 100,000 plus, sorry, I got a new kitten, by the way, yo. Look at her. Yeah. She likes to crawl over my stuff. But when you're a larger influencer, you get a lot of negativity, a lot of kickback, right? A lot of negativity and a lot of kickback. And, I knew that I was going to, right? I knew I was going to, but hopefully it helped but hopefully it helped bring attention to that blockchain, which I feel like it did, right? Because, there's a lot of other individuals that are higher up that are now in my DMs, and we're discussing about this blockchain in which they never talked about before. And I'm constantly in meetings with helping people onboard into this blockchain, right? So what I did was intentional, right? But it wasn't intentional to a point that I wanted people to hate me, but more so like, hey, I'm a WWE superstar. I have to play the heel from time to time.
I understand. I guess my perspective on it. Look, you're a full-grown investor. You've been in the market much longer than I am. You do what you want with your bags. You know what I'm saying? You're an educated investor. I guess my perspective on it, and I've been watching you for years, but you've been screaming XRP from the rooftop for years, and the way that you've kind of gotten people's attention was focusing on the development and the actual integration with Ripple to TradFi. And we're sitting at a point, specifically with just XRP, where the lawsuit has a resolution. Hidden road acquisition. Mm-hmm. You're looking at institutional XRP ETF. This is kind of at the peak of where XRP is to be, and you've been calling it out for years from the top of the rooftop, and you're one of the few people that got my attention to start to look into XRP. I guess and I don't want to, I think it's absolutely wrong that people are kind of giving you a hard time about it, but what made you decide that was the best way for you to approach to get people's attention into XPR as a different diversion of what you've been doing with XRP over the last couple of years by simply just educating people on the actual integration and the adoption and the tech stack of it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there is, I covered a lot of information regarding the XPR ecosystem, and there's many people within the community that do the same thing, right? Aquaman was the one who, for the better part of over a year now, nonstop, kept on telling me, to get into XPR, right? It wasn't until about 2 months ago till I actually did it. To be honest with you, I first heard about it back in early 2023, where a good buddy of mine by the name of DeFi King, he's the one who actually introduced it to me, right? And people who are OGs inside of the TikTok space know who DeFi King is. He's had over 30 accounts taken down. He's the one who called out, XPR. He's the one who called out Stronghold. He called out a lot of hidden gems within these ecosystems, right? He's now retired now. Congratulations to him because he got in so early into all of these projects, right? So, for me, the reason why I bring that up is because, I looked back on the past, right? And in order to look at the future and see what the future has, the philosophy is you always got to look at the past so you can know how to navigate the future. So I looked at the past, and in the past, people would always be negative towards the XPR community, right? Like legitimately, like I was like, holy crap! I knew about XPR, but I never looked into it just because of the simple fact that there were larger creators that threw shade at it, right? So whenever I approached it this time go around, right, I knew I couldn't. And with the timeline, like people got to keep in mind, I literally just got into XPR not even a month and a half ago, right? With the timeline of the shift and how fast it's about to go, I had to do something spontaneous. I cannot just say, hey, here's a little piece of bread. Just serve it up just little by little. No, I had to full blown throw something crazy and spontaneous out there to captivate and get people's attention, right? Did I take the right approach? I believe I did, right? Does it hurt my reputation? Absolutely, right? Because a lot of people, they're like, oh shit, Echo, he switched up. Echo done got poisoned or whatever. But the thing is that, when you're in my position, and you see that, okay, well, I already know what XRP is going to do. We've been talking about XRP for many years, right? And at the top of even during the bearish markets, I was there, right? So I took that same exact philosophy that I did when I first got into XRP, and I applied it toward XPR, where I was I was one of the most hated persons inside of the community of the crypto community because I was talking about XPR, or I was talking about XRP during the bear market, right? So I took that same exact philosophy that I did before because it was going to happen. People were going to hate on me no matter what, right? So I took that same exact philosophy and put it on to what I'm doing right now, right? And because I have so much conviction in it, and I utilize the platform, the DEX and all that stuff, right? The loan protocol and whatnot, and I see what a lot of people don't see, right? Because I'm continuously doing the research. I can have that conviction onto there so that I can help give people that extra boost to being like, hey, there's a reason why he's talking about it. Again, somebody with 100,000 plus followers, you think I would want to just do it to hurt my brand? No, absolutely not. I did it because it was necessary, right? And it was necessary, and hopefully in the future, people can see the sacrifice I had to make, right? So that for the greater good, right? And for the greater good so that people can have the opportunity, right? Because let's just say, for example, you get in on loan protocol, right? And loan is sitting at like a $70 million market cap. This thing to go to multi-billion dollar market cap, billion-dollar market cap, whoever got in early is, they're going to reap the rewards. They're going to be very happy. Right? Not saying that XRP can't do magical numbers or crazy astronomical numbers, right? But for the many years that I talked about XRP, a lot of people accumulated XRP and we made a lot of money, right? I mean, I got into XRP at the lowest I got into with 36 cents, right? So, I made a lot, I 10x my whole entire XRP portfolio right off, during that period of time, right? But at the same time, even though XRP was there's still other bags I want to make sure that I accumulated, and the people that follow me had the opportunity to accumulate together too. Because at the end of the day, it's all about us rising together, right? Now, again, I would never tell anybody to sell their XRP bag, right, or want them to sell their XRP bag. That's completely up to them, right? For me, again, for me, I did it in a way that I still hold XRP, but I hold it in a different, in the meme coin aspect way, where I see this, this other meme coin what it can actually do. And I hold my other assets in somewhere where I know can multiply. I feel like can multiply a lot more.
So
right?
Talk to me about exactly how you're holding XRP. I know you're saying that you're holding fuzzy. How exactly are you holding your XRP that was different than what you were holding 6-7 months ago?
So before I held a lot of XRP in general, right? Within my cold storage. But whenever you hold on to fuzzy, right, you're still holding on to XRP, right? Because it's priced in XRP, right? So because Fuzzy's on the XRP ledger. Now, this is where you kind of gotta go into like the backstory of knowing, going to the research of like what Fuzzy is, who developed it, or not who developed it, but how deep the lore is, right? And the lore for Fuzzy itself was the original wallet for Fuzzy was created by OpenCoin. Anybody who's familiar with OpenCoin that's Ripple now, right? And it goes deeper than that, right? It goes deeper to the point that, you start tracking the current wallets right now that manage the Fuzzy Bear treasury and stuff like that. And it gets deep. So for me, I feel like that it's actually connected to Hidden Road. Fuzzy actually told us cryptically that it was, but I'm not out here trying to convince anybody otherwise that it's not. I'm just like, okay, look, I did it for many months. I did it for almost 4 or 5 months that I just talked about Fuzzy nonstop, right? And then I got so much negativity toward the community because, of course, it wasn't Bearable Guy 123. But for me, I'm kind of like, it's not. Who's to say it's not Bearable Guy 123 or somebody that has connections with Bearable Guy, right? Because I always tell people this. I'm like, well, if Ripple and all of these other blockchains, right, or just Ripple, most importantly, right, and they spent the whole entire global system spent over 50 years to help develop this technology, right? And to onboard tens to hundreds of trillions of dollars. Do you really believe that they're going to keep it in the hands of just a bunch of degens? Or are they going to funnel it into a project that's kind of like a Trojan horse that they can still oversee? Because, when you look at the Fuzzy Bear token and you look at how everything's been meticulously set up from the website to the treasury wallet to the NFTs and everything, you're like, holy shit, this is not just some amateur Joe Smo that just created this project. Whoever created this project knows what the F they're doing, But so for me, I'm like, I have conviction in it. Even if it doesn't happen, well, hey, man, you want to know what? I have major bags in other cryptocurrencies, right?
So let me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said that you believe that you could find potential greater ROIs with other tokens. We have an official, I guess you could say it's an official price prediction for you with XRP, which would be to $10,000. Now, at a current price of $3 or whatever, to 10,000, you're looking at almost 325,000% ROI. What would be your price predictions for something like Fuzzy or something like XPR, where you think that you have a competitive ROI compared to your $10,000 XRP price point? What would be your return?
Yeah, so 10,000
you could get out would be a better investment vehicle for you rather than the XRP conviction that you have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So $10,000 price prediction, we don't know when that's going to happen. I have a feeling it'll happen, like in our lifetime, 100%. I can't sit there and be like, oh, it's going to happen next year, right? And nobody can sit there and say I've ever said that, right? But I have just had this strong conviction that, it has to be priced high in order for the system to work properly, right? Now, the reason why I did it with Fuzzy was because, again, the information I just shared about Fuzzy, the small amount of lore, but also because David Schwartz even tweeted about the meme coin space, right? And how meme coins, having your XRP in a meme coin that's connected to the liquidity pool that powers off the liquidity pool, right, are a multiplier, right? So it's like playing, or it's like gambling, or not gambling, but investing in XRP, but on leverage with that meme coin. And coincidentally, that tweet came out the same exact, actually the same exact week that the NFTs for Fuzzy came out. Right, the original NFTs. So for me, I'm like, you want to know what? It's a bet for me, right? Like it's a gamble, right? But my conviction that I had with that particular project and the research I've done and the community had done in the background, it just led me to believe it. Not only besides that, I'm a big conspiracy head, right? Because conspiracies are what led me to where I am right now. I wasn't there during the time of like the Cube movement, when everybody got and like started researching the Q posts and stuff like that. But one of the things that stuck out to me was time, right? Timestamps and stuff like that. And that's what one of my friends, Q, she always used to cover the Q post, and I never knew where to get them at until she shared the link with me one day. And when she did, she always told me to look out for certain timestamps. So one of the timestamps that that always stuck out to me the most was that on Fuzzy, it would always post at 3:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And 3:21 p.m. is on the Q post, that stands for U.S. military, right? So the U.S., the idea that the U.S. military has always been, operating this whole entire switch to this monetary system in the background, right? And then the other timestamp post that it would post at is at 1:23 p.m. And 1:23 p.m. is at nothing is coincidental, right? Everything has a reason. So, they were to me, as far as the project, they were the very first ones that do post at that time, but also consistently, right? So it's kind of like, but only people that actually follow the queue would know that. You get what I'm saying? Like me telling people that right now, they're probably going to go there and look at it like, oh snap, Echo's right, right? But it's kind of like it was only meant for the people that see it would know. Right. So that's what led me into that portion of it, because, I don't know how much, we all know that, we all speculate that Bitcoin was created by the NSA. Right. And then David Schwartz, he's part of all of that. Right. All that rabbit hole. David Schwartz had the patent for blockchain technology and stuff like that. So realistically, this could be a whole entire gigantic operation in the background. And, they're trying to cryptically tell certain individuals to pay attention to certain things, right? And the ones that align with that view or message, then they'll, not only will they continue to do their research, but they will also, they'll also put their money where their mouth is, right? So, yeah, so that's on that, right? On the XPR side of things, I mean, the XPR side of things, it just led me down. The U.S. debt clock is what led me to XPR. I mean, my homeboy Aquaman, he always constantly, talked to me about XPR, right, cryptically in my ear. Finally, it was the U.S. debt clock. One of their most secret, or they're on their most recent PDF drop, right, that you can go to their website right now and download. On page 26, it talks about the credit unions and how we get our sovereignty back, right? And it all connects with the credit union. And the credit unions are everything to do with Metallicus and, Metal and XPR ecosystem compliance, right? KYC and AML compliance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people, whenever that connected for me, I was kind of like, well, it became a no-brainer, which I still continue to appreciate. Thank you very much for the gift. I continue to do the research. And when I started doing the research, I actually started using the protocols. And once I started using the protocols, it makes sense to me. I'm like, oh, snap. Like they're again, if they're going to be onboarding hundreds of trillions of dollars, especially when it comes to institutions, you think institutions are just going to use a Joe Smo DEX or a DeFi protocol, or one that's regulated?
In terms of the compliance, right? In terms of the XPR, we know that the compliance is actually built into the blockchain itself. With XRP, they don't have a hands-on anything to do with the KYC. They leave that up for the institutions to come in. Do you believe that since the KYC is built into the Proton protocol, that it kind of brings up an issue of centralization?
Mm-mm. So it's not built onto the XPR protocol. So there's two blockchains, right? There's the Metal blockchain, and then there's the XPR ecosystem, right? Now on the Metal blockchain is where all the KYC and AML compliance comes in at, right? And this is where they onboard all the banks and credit unions through that end. Okay, XPR is on the Web3 side. So they're two different blockchains. They're legitimately two different blockchains.
The identity is tied is tied with XPR. Your identity is tied to you forever. Their KYC is built in with XPR, correct?
Yes. So you're still going to have KYC no matter what, but it will break the reason why it won't be like centralized, right? Like as far as like centralization, like what we're going through right now, is because, so think about it this way. The reason why the centralization right now is bad is because the one entity or one company controls all the money, right? So if we did it in that case, right, we can't in order to get out of that rat race that we're in right now, we had to break up all of that. This is where Ripple, XRP handles the global settlement, Stellar handles onboarding the unbanked, right? Cardano handles, AI, right? HBAR handles enterprises, XPR, they handle everything to do with the US, right? Because no matter what, we were always going to go through a KYC AML type of compliance world. I mean,
right. If that opportunity is enforced at the protocol level, if the KYC is enforced at the protocol level, that anytime you want to interact with Proton, the KYC is tied to your identity. That option isn't there. So that's what I mean in terms of like centralization, since your identity is tied to your account forever. That's my concern with the centralization aspect of it. At least what I'm doing is I'm trying to compare the KYC aspect of it, because I do believe that when regulations come in, KYC is going to be integrated, included into it. But the way that it's tied into the actual chain, the way that it is utilized on the XRP ledger, the KYC is the Ripple or the ledger itself doesn't enforce the KYC. They leave that up to the institutions to actually KYC in order for them to interact with it. But on Proton, it's baked into the actual code of it. So that identity with Proton is tied to your account. That's kind of my concern with the centralization aspect of it.
So one thing too, like centralized, like you was talking about central authority of like your information, where it's being held at, or you're talking about who controls over the like let's just say if somebody commits fraud, right, or a certain level of fraud, right, whoever makes those decisioning, whoever makes that decision. Because I think that we have to separate the two, right? Because like the way that how it's set up with the decentralized identity, right? So in the future, let's just say, for example, if you take out a loan, right, instead of actually going out and putting in your social security number, birth certificate, or date of birth and all that jazz, right? That could just be leaked out everywhere, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful just to be like at blockchain bully?
The identity aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. So in that case, everything is encrypted, right? So it's not just floating around, because you see what happens with all of these hacks where, you just put in your information just being leaked everywhere, right? So I think on that side of things, we need to have some type of like onboarding KYC and AML, because, for example, for me, I'm not committing any type of criminal activities. I'm pretty sure you're not either. And a lot of people aren't. Right. So, I don't believe that, I believe that the narrative is that a lot of people feel like that they're going to have like control over people. Like, oh, they're going to tell you can't do this, you can't do that. Right. Well, that's where the DAO comes in. Right. That's where the decentralized autonomous organization comes in that oversee these protocols. Right. I encourage people to look at the DAO dashboard, especially on the Proton network, because it's actually built in with Doge, right? Like Doge, DOGE, right? Where Doge is going to give you the ability to have a vote, right, on that dashboard. Okay. And when you have all of that information, you'll see that all of it, right? You'll see that all this information that's coming out, right, that it breaks it into a decentralized, organization, right? Because it's not one centralized company that's sitting here saying, oh, you can't do this, oh, you can't do that, right? It's given up to the people. And because the people have the vote and it's all done on blockchain, we make that decision factor. So let's just say if somebody commits $100 million in fraud, right? We will make that decision if it comes to like a judging decision whether or not we should ban this person from interacting on the platform. I could kind of like that.
Is that because in terms of actual enforcement with bad actors and illicit activities, when they do commit financial crimes with these blockchains, whether it's the IRS or whatever governmental agency, when regulations is in place and they do kind of, I guess, subpoena that chain for that information in order to catch those bad actors, is it really up to the people to decide what to do with that if the government kind of can step in? And this is true with every blockchain, when the government can step in and I guess subpoena that information.
Mm-hmm. So this is where so for example, right, if somebody does do illicit activities, you can always put up a proposal, right, and to try to anybody can go into the dashboard, into this particular dashboard, and put up into a proposal, right? So I don't want to speak on the behalf of saying, hey, they will ban people, right, from using the platform, right, because they have their KYC. I don't, I have not seen that issue come up, right? Could they do it? Absolutely, right? I mean, that's the same thing with like TikTok, for example, right? You say something, that they don't agree with, they just knock you off. I mean, we had it happen last time. But for the most part, as far as I don't want any bad actors, inside of the space, right? We're trying to clear out all the bad actors. That's the whole entire purpose of us going into this technology. But in order to do that, people have to be held accountable too, right? We can't just be out here having anonymous addresses all over the place, right? We already tried to do that, and you see how it ends up. Look at everybody that are pulling all of these rug pulls and all these pumping ups, especially on other ecosystems like the Solana ecosystem. If people were held accountable, then we wouldn't have those issues, right? Or KYC becomes really important because, in AML compliance, especially when it comes to these elites, right? These big players and big dogs in the space. Right. So I think that, in my opinion, it's more used for, bigger illicit activities and stuff. And for like individuals, like smaller people, or, people, your regular person won't really have to necessarily actually worry too much. Right. And I like to go to, as an example, talk about, like China, for example. Right. Because my mom, she goes over to China, 6 months out of the year. Right, her boyfriend owns property out there, right, and they're on that social credit score, CBDC, and stuff like that, and everybody speaks so negative about that country, right? But my mom literally voice chats me whenever she's over there, and she talks nothing but positive, right? Not just saying that because she loves China, but it's not as negative as everybody makes it seem like to be, right? So for example, right, what people don't talk about is that 95% of the crime rate dropped by 95% within the first year that digital currencies were issued out in China, and this digital ID system.
Do you believe that that's because of fear of being turned off of the system?
It could be because of that, or it could be because, hey, they understood that, if you commit a crime, it's tracked to you.
Yeah,
let's just say, for example, exactly. So, for example, for me, I don't mind it because, I already know I'm going to be super rich, right? A lot of us are going to be super rich, right? But why the fuck should I have to live in fear if I'm super rich, right? People, if I'm going to have $100 million, all right, come at me, bro. You want to know what? You're going to try to take out my life? All right, cool. But you want to know if I transfer my money or somebody transfers it out of me, it gets linked to whoever, so you're going to get caught. So it's kind of not worth it at that point.
I think that this is a fear of many people, maybe not even just in China, but definitely in America, with the issuance of this programmable digital money. Whether you want to call it a CBDC or a stablecoin, I think that we both have the agreement that it is programmable money. The only difference between a stablecoin and a CBDC is the actual issuer of it. But if that KYC and AML is baked into the formula and it is programmable money, what necessarily is the difference between people being fearful of that identity tied to them in China versus the identity tied to them in America, simply just because it's under the name of a stablecoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people, when it comes to like it being connected to you, no matter what, right? Everything's going to be connected back to you, no matter what. So I think the fear of like people just a lot of people are going to be fearful, and they put that fear stuff out there, and they're going to miss out on they're going to miss out on the opportunity not just to learn but just to invest too, right? Because that's what a lot of people are hesitant, right? A lot of people, I speak to a lot of people, right, and a lot of people don't get into crypto because they don't want to KYC and buy crypto.
Right.
Like you're going to have to KYC no matter what. It always links to you.
That's the issue really right now between like your OG crypto investors where they believe in the decentralization, that freedom aspect of it, and maybe even me myself, the pro utility holders who want the institutions to come in, but the institutions need that KYC, that AML, that digital identity on chain. It kind of maybe contradicts the original thought process of what crypto was supposed to become, that freedom aspect.
Yeah. And it would have been great if people didn't abuse it, right? And a great way to bring it up, right? How people abused it is one of the biggest hacks of all time was the Mt. Gox hacks. The Bitcoin, because everybody talks about Bitcoin. Everybody's like, oh, Bitcoin is supposed to break us free from the system and everything like that. Yeah, it was. I'm not going to lie to you.
I don't know anything about
It was.
I don't know nothing about that hack, Mt. Gox.
Oh, the Mt. Gox. It was where all the Bitcoin that the United States have, they seized it from the Mt. Gox hacks. Because
briefly walk me through this, please.
So Mt. Gox was one of the largest crypto exchanges out there, Bitcoin exchange, one of the first ones, right? And there was illicit activities that were taking place in Mt. Gox, right? Which obviously liquidated it. And there's been rumors, right? But also evidential information that it was linked to people within the Ethereum Foundation that did those hacks. Then you start connecting it with Ethereum, ETH and all that stuff, right? But regardless, anyways, if we just had a way where it completely became anonymous, which we did, okay? Bitcoin was that once upon a time, and they abused it, because and the power, certain people within that position, they abused it, right? And they try to take over or try to control the system for bad, right? This is where, again, if we didn't have to go down that route of keeping things anonymous, if we could have just kept things anonymous and people would have not done the negative stuff inside a blockchain, we wouldn't have that issue. But there's a reason why they were able not to just do it, but they were able to get away with it for so long. Now I think it's all coming back full circle, considering that, KYC and AML compliance, and you hear the U.S. Treasury, the guy from the U.S. Treasury, right? Him saying that we're not going to buy Bitcoin. No, we're going to seize the Bitcoin. How did they seize it? Well, everything is connected to KYC and AML compliance. And if you were part of some of those major illicit activities surrounding around Bitcoin, you're most likely going to be summoned, right?
Yeah, Echo, how does this tie into the idea of a new monetary system with DeFi? Like, is DeFi going to pave the way for personal freedom if that KYC is attached to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I make money every single day on DeFi right now, bro. Like, I'm KYC. I don't have no problem. And I think a lot of people.
I'm saying personal freedom, which would be of course you could say identity, private identity is tied into personal freedom, more personal freedom more than the financial freedom aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, so like for me, I mean, I would love the opportunity not to have to, like, every single time I fill out information that I have to put out my social security number and my birth date and my personal information, my address and stuff. If I could just put it in one place, like my bank, right? Because my bank has all my information. I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Just leave it there. And then from there, I just use my @name, right? @echothetruth.com, and just apply for whatever I need. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm out, dude. We're doing it right now. It's like we're on, what a lot of people don't realize is that the system that we are on right now, the Federal Reserve note, right? The centralized system we're on right now, that's a digital dollar right there. The when you go and spend your money at your bank account, right? Chances of it, you're using Cash App or you're using your debit card. You're not using physical cash, and you're paying bills digitally.
Yeah.
It's a digital dollar as it is right now, but it's all controlled by one entity, right? This way, if we go to stable coins, at least the issuer, right? There's hundreds of issuers of different stable coins. At least, hey, if one stable coin doesn't work out, you dip out and go to another one. But you can't do that with the dollar.
So the thing with the stable coins, though, if the stable coins have to be backed with U.S. treasuries or cash equivalents, wouldn't that necessarily kind of fall back up to the top of the pyramid, going back into the issuer of the U.S. dollar, the issuer of the U.S. debt? Wouldn't it kind of just be like this, right? If at the top every stablecoin has to be backed up by U.S. treasuries or U.S. debt, isn't that kind of going back into the hands of the issuer of the debt?
Oh, hold on, sorry, you threw me on a curveball. So if every dollar is backed up by, or every stable coin is backed up by bonds and by the debt itself, would it work up? Yeah, I mean, definitely. It gives confidence in the dollar for sure, or the new dollar.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, I think it's really the Trojan horse to get the dollar back into its dominant position. I guess my concern is that maybe it's not necessarily phasing out the central bank in the way that we thought that it was. The central bank's probably.
No, if you think about it, right? Look, banks. I don't think banks are never going to go away, right? I know that people had that theory that crypto came in to replace the banks, and I'm like, yo, that's not how it's gonna work, bro. We can't be Neanderthals and just go back and eventually in the world we will go to, and as the world progresses, we will go through a virtual barter trading system, right? But there has to be a progressionary period till we get to that point, right? But for now, right, as the transition periods happen, like for example, the Federal Reserve is no more, right? Spoiler alert for anybody that knows or doesn't know, right? You Google search Federal Reserve, the building, the thing is permanently closed, right? But we already knew that was going to happen, right?
What? Say that one more time. The Federal Reserve is closed?
Yeah, if you Google searched, you Google search the Federal Reserve, a lot of them across the country too, including the main headquarters, is permanently closed because they're transitioning from the Federal Reserve into the Treasury right now as we speak, right? So you have to go for Google Maps for the direction. Yeah, it was going viral last week. I'm surprised you didn't see it.
From what I see on Google, it says that it opens Saturday at 11:15 a.m. But what does the actual opening of the building? What does the actual opening of the buildings represent in terms of the integration in with the? I'm struggling to find that connection that you were trying to.
Well, so for example, the Federal Reserve, so the Federal Reserve is a corporation, right? An entity, just like any corporation out there, right? And it was never it's never a government, right? The Federal Reserve was, anybody that knows that history, right? Well, with that being said, if you're just like any type of corporation or entity, if you have too much debt and you can't pay off your debt, what happens? Well, you go bankrupt, right? But it doesn't mean that you're everything is gone, right? Because if you go through any type of bankruptcy, there's assets, right? I'm trying not to get banned. So, but whenever you go through bankruptcy, there's assets, right? And people, whoever buys that debt will, or takes over, somebody can go in and buy that entity, right? And take over and liquidate all the assets, right? One of the biggest piece of asset that I believe that the Federal Reserve has that a lot of people don't talk about is data, right? You have over 100 years worth of data, right? And I would think it would be very stupid for anybody to think that, the Federal Reserve, they're just going to abolish it and just go away, right? Because the data that it has is very, very important. Data is the new oil, right? And if you're able to plug into the APIs from the Federal Reserve, not saying the Federal Reserve itself, it will continue to be a central bank, but more so it becomes a railway for payments and rails, right? And so that's where I'm like, okay, well, the evolution from Federal Reserve to Fed now, it makes 100% sense, right? Because again, just like any entity, like if I were to go in and help this corporation go through bankruptcy, right? There's got to be data and information and asset that I can take and to recoup my what I did to get out of the bankruptcy or get them out of bankruptcy, right? So for me, that's where my thought process is, that like the central banks itself is gone, right? You're gonna have a lot of banks, right? A lot of mini banks everywhere, right? Instead of it just being one bank that controls this whole entire pyramid, it's going to be just a lot of smaller banks, credit unions, right? Ones that are that are officially backed and can be verified on the blockchain.
You know what, dude? You have such an interesting perspective. And speaking of banned, the last time when we had spoken, we were talking about the straw man theory, and then boom, you got taken right off. So I'm obsessed with you and how close I can get. I kind of want to. We don't have to speak about the straw man theory, but I would like to talk about your skepticism towards the mainstream narrative. I know that we were talking that COVID-19 was really what awakened your eyes towards questioning the mainstream narrative and kind of finding the distinction between the truth from manipulation. Could you explain to people how exactly are you finding the truth from manipulation, and how are you able to have that critical thinking aspect skill?
Yeah, man. Shoot. Discernment, right? Discernment is a big key of all of it, right? To be honest with you, because there's so many narratives that are being presented right in front of us at all times, right? So using discernment, but also just letting our own faith take our own course. Like, just because I say something doesn't mean it's 100%, right? But my beliefs I've always narrowed my belief down to the U.S. debt clock images, right? Which I studied those relentlessly, right? Not only do I have all of them, but I studied them relentlessly to a point that my faith is put into what the U.S. debt clock had told me was going to happen. And between everything with the Q post, between Bearable Guy 123 and all these other riddles and stuff, the U.S. debt clock has been the most accurate one, right? So for me, that's how, at least for me, how I articulate how this new system is being set up, because the U.S. debt clock has always told us that. And yes, light love, appreciate it. I am very, very spiritual. I'm a very spiritual being. And I think a lot of us are.
We are going to jump into it.
Originally, I wasn't, right? I'm not going to lie to you. And it took my buddy Awaken, Reggie, to where I had a one-on-one conversation with him a couple years ago. We were both in XRP. But again, remember, I didn't come from XRP from a spiritual standpoint. I came from XRP because I got into crypto, right? And I got into Ethereum and Solana and stuff like that. It wasn't, and the only reason, one of the main reasons what captivated me was that whenever I talked to my buddy Reggie, also known as Awaken X here on TikTok, he's a published best-selling author, and he talked about human trafficking, right? And so whenever he told me about that, I wasn't into that stuff, right? I was in crypto, I know money, but then I'm like, what are you talking about human trafficking? What are you talking about missing children? All this stuff. And I'm just like, what? Then I started doing my own research on that, and I'm like, whoa, this is big. Like, this is bigger than anybody can anticipate. Nobody's talking about it, but the people that are talking about it, they're getting shoved underneath the rug, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, well, there's a problem, right? Not only is this growing amount of U.S. national debt a major issue, but, where is this money going to, and how are they getting the money, right? And, to do
that's how
all
you tie
that.
it all together is following the money. Yeah.
Exactly. So when that spiritual side of me of learning that side and knowing that good versus evil, like how evil the world is, and, you always heard the theory that, I forgot what the philosophy or what the quote was, but basically, if you follow the money, you'll see the root leads to all this evil, right? And which it does, right? And it's very, very evil, right? Some people say it is, I don't want to get too much into it here because I don't want to get taken down again, but the fact of the matter is that once I started, learning about that, that's when I was like, okay, well, what's the solution, right? Because then you had two major solutions. One is the monetary system is about to crash. How are they going to fix that? And then two, you have all these evilness in this world. How are we going to, remove that at the same time as reset this global system? So I tied all of it together and come to where I am now, right? To this conclusion, not just, again, XRP, but like this whole entire global financial system changing, AML, KYC compliance, because again, a lot of us that don't mind, at least for me, right? I'm not out here doing illicit activity, nor am I sitting here, doing anything to do with the trafficking and stuff, right? The ones that have to worry about it are the ones that are doing it. And I feel like it was always going to be the plan, but also to safe keep human civilization so that we can continue to innovate, right? That we have to go down this route, because that's the number one thing right now. It's like you look back in history, human innovation has been suppressed since pretty much since we got off the gold standard, right? Because you can literally look at like right when 1970 happened. Right before that, we were completely being innovative, right? Human civilization is innovative. And then as soon as 1970 happened, right, it's just like nothing but downhill. Not saying it wasn't downhill before, but like innovation, which is none.
Even before that, like if you take a look at the U.S. dollar dominance, right? 1913, the Bretton Woods Conference, we created the gold standard. That lasted about until 1969, 1970. Then Nixon took us off of the gold standard, put us onto the petrodollar or the fiat dollar. And now here we are in the 2020s, and we're experiencing the same things that we did in the 1970s, right? Rising inflation, dollar dominance decreasing, the spending value of the dollar almost absolutely wiped out. We're experiencing the same exact things. When you look at the history of the U.S. dollar, just about every 60 years or so, you start to actually see the change and the development of it. And I believe that this is my theory, is that we are due for that upgrade in the financial system, and it's going to go from fiat into digital. I think that we have the same perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I want to just address something in the comments, because people are saying to look all the way back to Jekyll Island, right, to Titanic, right, which is 100% true. But what I'm talking about is innovation, right? Innovation stopped literally, like, even though we have the internet and stuff like that, right? If you notice, like as soon as we got the internet, I don't know how old you are, but as soon as we got the internet, right, they came and took over the internet. They came and took over what we know as Web 2, right? This is why you're seeing our data, why it's so important. Web 3 is so important, right? Because our data is all being sold by them, right? And if data is the new oil, why do we want them to be in control of our stuff, of our information?
These blockchains that actually solve the ownership of data, as we do transition from Web 2 into Web 3, those blockchains that do give the right of ownership back to the actual clientele user, like for example, ICP is one of those things where you can develop websites and things like that, and the data you actually own. Do you believe that that is just as important in Web 3 as it is now, or do you think that the entities will always want to have a control of your data, and somehow, some way, you will never actually own the data, even when we do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think that no matter what, like gigantic corporations like that will want to, right? Just because of the fact of greed, right? But it's not to say that we can't move away from that type of mindset or type of atmosphere and world. Is because of how things are structured, right? Especially whenever you have nodes and DAOs and stuff, right? The Web3 setup, right? Because if you host a node, then anybody that hosts that node has a copy of that ledger, has a copy of that blockchain. Okay, so that keeps things separated from just a central point of authority of something, right? Now, are there going to be centralized systems? Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. I don't think that JP Morgan Chase is going to become decentralized anytime soon. And anybody that believes that, well, I mean, it is what it is, right? But it's not to say that we can't slowly start breaking free from that type of environment and world. It's going to take time, right? I don't want to sit here and be like, hey, the world, right, cannot become fully decentralized in the future, because I feel like that can happen, right? But we have to go through a growing phase where we have to eliminate or take out all the bad actors that put us in this predicament in the first place. Because majority of us, again, that want this decentralized world, right? We're not the ones pulling off all of this BS. We're not the ones doing all this negative stuff, right? You know, but if given the opportunity, right, and we're able to, remove those people, and as time goes on, we can become more decentralized. I think that that's a better growing phase than just going fully decentralized, right? Because again, we tried to do that before, and look at what happened. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like now we have to go backwards in time, right? And put security measures into place so we can catch all the bad actors, and then we can move forward again. And I feel like that's what's happening, right? That's why I love Back to the Future movies or the references, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to be going back to the future, but we just had to, use the what's it called, Thanos. We had to use all the Infinity Stones just to go back in time and just fix some things first.
I think that it's almost inevitable, right? The solutions that blockchain is offering is obviously there's obviously a market for it, and whether it's going to be retail adoption that drives institutional adoption into it, or even just institutional adoption, adopting it for their own services for their own clientele base. I think that these services that your centralized authorities now have control over, whether that's your data or maybe your payment information or whatever the case is, maybe they give it up. But I also find it very, very hard for them to, like, if you're saying, and I agree with you, if you're saying that data is in control, how reluctant are they going to be to kind of give that up to a decentralized network? Like to kind of just not be able to profit off of your data. So I'm almost 50-50 with it. I don't necessarily know exactly where I stand in terms of my perspective, or what I think the next 10 years looks like in terms of decentralized data, ownership of data. I don't necessarily know, or how much control these central authorities are going to give up. I don't know.
I mean, I think that they're already giving up, right? Because you take a look at Facebook right now, right? If you take a look at Facebook, Facebook, now you can monetize on Facebook, and Instagram, right? That right there is a big piece right there. A lot of people are missing out on. Like, if you feel like that, if they still wanted not just to control your data, but also take all that money, they wouldn't have given you the ability to be able to monetize on those platforms, right? And I believe that the transitional change is happening as we speak, right? The humanity, because it's always going to lead to that level where our data is back to us. We own the data. We go into Web3, right? It's going to evolve, etc. And that's where humanity will be able to flourish. And I believe that, whether people like it or not, right? Trump has a big role that played in all of it, because a lot of these executive orders that he signed in help bring power and give power back to the people, right? Whether it's our privacy or it's because like Edward Snowden, right? I can talk about that because that's legit. It's real, right? That information is true. They, they had the executive orders to oversee and watch us, right? Which they still do, but it's going to be to a point where if they watch us, that we own that data. Like, for example, right now, we're on live right now, right? Although they might have this information in their database, we're the ones that own this information, and we can monetize off of it.
I don't necessarily know that if we do. I mean, I'm sure that we sign it away when we do click on those long terms and agreements that we never read. I'm sure we do sign it away, because when you don't click on that, you can't actually access the app. And I know the US is a little bit different than the EU. They have a little bit more of ownership of data, but I'm not so sure that we actually own the data on Facebook, on YouTube, on Google, on TikTok, because we do accept those terms and agreements. And not that I know this for a fact, but I'm sure it's baked into there somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it might be, but for the most part, we can still monetize off of it. Like right now, we could do clips, right, and just make a lot of freaking money just doing clips off of it, like of our conversation. You see it happen all the time. Before, right, you didn't have that ability, right? And if you did have that ability, they would do everything they can to, to keep it for themselves, right? Because that you're using their platform, so you're using their data, right?
You do agree that they are monetizing off of your data, off of my data. They are selling that to third-party agencies that are looking to maybe reel you in for marketing campaigns or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
When you go to Best Buy,
right now it's getting.
They're sending that email out to 1,000 agencies that want to email you something about dick pills.
Yeah. Well, see, wouldn't it be great instead of when you're going into Best Buy or someplace, right? Instead of filling in all your information that they can sell, that they can only sell your user or your ad name?
Now, well, wouldn't that? How does that necessarily compare to like the zero knowledge proofs? Because to some degree, the zero knowledge proofs does protect your identity. When they do need to, I guess, obtain some sort of identity from you, they can provide it without necessarily revealing the excess of it. It's kind of just like a yes or no kind of thing. So does that kind of tie into that identity with what you're referring to with the identity on chain?
So I don't want to speak on the zero knowledge proof because I'm not familiarized with that itself. Like I know about zero knowledge proof, I know of it, but I know tied in with the decentralized identity stuff, right? But what I can say is that so no matter what, there's going to be you're going to have to KYC no matter where you go to, whether it's a centralized exchange, your bank, whatever, right? But instead of it being to a point that you're filling it out everywhere, your personal information, every single place, everywhere where it can be sold, right? And your information be sold and passed on down to the next person. Wouldn't it just be great if you just have it at one place, right? And that one place, okay, that one place will have that information, but instead of you filling out the information over and over again where it can be leaked, you just have it just a username. Right. Again, if you had your bank, right? If whoever you bank with, right? Chase, Fifth Third, whatever, whoever you bank with, right? You already filled out your KYC with them already, right? Or even Coinbase, right? Instead of filling out multiple applications later on, right? And you already filled it out with Coinbase, wouldn't it be better just to be like, hey, this is my at name. That's my history. That's anything you need is right there, right? And just verify that I'm a natural human being. It'll verify my credit score, right? You don't need my social security number. You don't need any of that. I think that's kind of like, well, I mean, old boy down here, right here, he said, zero knowledge proof. That's zero knowledge proof. Okay, cool, even better. Like, again, I don't know zero knowledge proof like that to a point. I just know that, we do have the protocols both on the XRP ledger and most predominantly when it comes to like the Metallica's ecosystem.
So maybe I could just catch up with what zero knowledge proof is. It's basically a means of which that someone that is trying to abstract information from you can get the answer without revealing too much information. So I think one of the best examples for this is if you have to go to the bar and the bar needs to make sure that you're over 21 to get in. Instead of giving them your ID, which has your name, your age, your address, right, your photo ID, instead of having all of that information that the bouncer can look at, when you do go to the bar with the zero knowledge proof, the guy would say, "Are you 21?" And it would be the zero knowledge proof would basically be able to say yes or no without revealing too much information. And that concept of it saying yes or no is trusted, verified, and documented within the blockchain. So they're basically trusting code instead of trusting, I guess, the ID itself. But it's basically the means of saying, like, the means of approving or disproving without giving out too much information. So that's kind of what I'm kind of referring it to with the identity aspect of it. It's like almost the same thing, like you're saying. Instead of going to all these different banks and KYCing and giving them your identity to here, and here, there is some sort of protocol level where that identity can be verified and trusted without too much information getting out to people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and I'm happy you explained that because it does make sense on like how they would do it on this type of level, right? How Marshall explained it, right? Do they have that incorporated? I don't know, right? I don't want to, again, I don't want to speak on the behalf of things I don't know about and I'm trying to assume things, right? But it makes sense if they do have a protocol into place, right? Or to have that information onto there so that it's secured, so that, because we all know that, again, blockchain and cryptic information is the future, right? That's helped, and we have to do it that way to protect not just our identity, but to protect data and information for the foreseeable future, especially as we go through this quantum, level of technology. So, I love that you explained, zero knowledge proof, right? Because it does make 100% sense if that's the case, right? It goes into the theory of like, why give out all your information when you can just give out just a piece of it and it verifies all your information without having to reveal anything.
I think that zero knowledge proof has been out.
1 second, yo.
Let me look this up. I think it was developed in like MIT or something. 1985 it was developed. We started to giant gain traction around now. Let me ask you something. Maybe this is too personal. You don't have to answer if you don't like it. Do you have a personal relationship with Marshall?
I have never publicly spoken to him, or privately spoken to him. No. Do we follow each other? Yeah, we follow each other. But I've never personally ever spoken to him ever. Like, yeah. I just do a lot of research on him.
Yeah, I've kind of.
But it's crazy. All the research and information I've ever learned about him, right? It only led me to have more conviction. And what I mean by that is that, when you learn that he was him and his partner that helped create Metallicus. Before they created Metallicus, right? They were the first people to create the first Bitcoin wallet on Facebook, right? Back in 2013. He also worked for Stellar, right? He was also in the same room as Arthur Bruto before. He had deep connections.
That's kind of like the man behind the curtain. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we don't know who Arthur Bruto is, right? But we know that whoever he is, he obviously knows what he's doing, and for somebody like Marshall to have been in the same room as Arthur Bruto back in the days, and him being as young as he is, definitely, says a lot about his character and who he is. So I don't have a personal relationship with him. I do know people that do have personal relationship with him. That's within the whole entire XPR community. And what I can say is that the information I've ever researched around Marshall had led me to nothing but positive information and bullish information. And, when it comes to lining up with my theories, as far as like me being an American citizen, breaking away from this enslavement system, he knows it. You can go down the timeline. You can see that that's all his information is about, right? And then you ask yourself, like, what other CEO out there that is that's out publicly talking on X and saying that they want freedom for humanity, and they're building that product to do it. I mean, I don't see Brad Garlinghouse doing that. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Brad, right? But I've never seen Brad Garlinghouse come out publicly and say, hey, I'm helping build this technology to break humanity free. You hear him saying that.
What exactly is it about XPR that caught your attention besides that? Because, look, you've been into XRP for a very long time, and I'm sure along the way you found fascinating, amazing, revolutionary projects, whether that's XLM, HBAR, QNT, Algo, Chainlink. Along your entire crypto journey, I would say probably, since as far as I've known, and maybe I'm not so accurate with this, but I would say probably about 90% of your online history has kind of been very bullish with XRP. And I'm sure along that entire process, you found HBAR, you found all these other exciting projects that are absolutely revolutionary to this industry. But what is it about XPR that is kind of going hand in hand with XRP for you? Is it just simply the built-in KYC?
No, definitely not. Because I spent a lot of time on the XRP ecosystem, and interacting with the community and utilizing the different types of applications that are over there, right? Because in order for me to speak up on this behalf, I have you. I feel like in order for anybody to speak on crypto, right, you have to utilize the technology, because otherwise you're just a person that just holds the token. You don't use it for its intended purpose, right? And for me, whenever using the XRP ledger, I saw that it was really underdeveloped. And what I mean by that is that, not saying that people can't develop on there, right? Because there are developers that are building, right, constantly. But when I went over to the XPR ecosystem and saw the applications that were built and how easy they were, the user interface was, it clicked to me like, holy shit. Not only do they have this, right, but it's on a compliant level. So, for example, right, if you're on the XRP ecosystem, anybody can spawn up a meme coin, right? Okay, and anybody can rug it, right? Same thing with Solana, Ethereum, all these other places. Over on the XPR ecosystem, yeah, you can spawn up a meme coin, but it's going to be linked to you and your wallet. So if you rug that sucker, it's linked to you, right? Okay, so that on that side, but also too the multi-sig capabilities, right? On Ethereum, in order to set up a multi-sig on the wallet, the developer wallet, you have to have a smart contract. On XRP, it's just a pain in the ass. We had to do it a few times, right? And it's just a fucking pain in the ass. On XPR, it's very simple. Right? Very, very simple. There's an interface that you literally go to and you add in the @name of the other individuals that will be part of this multi-sig wallet. So if you have a project that you launch, it's not just on the hands of one developer. You have 5 people, right? And it has to have a consensus of 3 out of 5 of the people have to sign on a transaction before it's going through, So those are 2 things, right? Then it was just the different applications that were there, right? Between, there's a social media platform on the XPR ecosystem that already fully integrated with X that nobody talks about. It's called Snip, right? And you can get paid in Snip token, not just for posting, but for whenever they have the ability to go live, you're going to get paid the Snip token. Whenever you just react, you're like a reply guy, you get paid in Snip token, right? They have a whole entire full-blown NFT platform, launchers. I mean, I compared that with what my experiences on these other ecosystems, right? And I'm like, holy crap, they have everything that we need to develop, but on this other ecosystem, right? And instead of me sitting here trying to think of ways of like either helping these projects build and we having to go through these hurdles, why don't we just do it on another blockchain that has everything that we need? Whether it's the liquidity, pool, securities, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that is very important to the future of this chain, and I think that all those aspects are pretty fascinating as it is. How does that? Do you honestly believe that XPR is going to be a part of the multi-chain future, but not only a part of the multi-chain future, but integrated in with maybe? Like, is it going to be relevant with the top 50, top 100 utility tokens that will be utilized? Like, as far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, but XPR is more retail focused. So in terms of the utility for institutional identity, isn't that up to the institutions? Like, how does this play into the multi-chain future for? I mean, maybe I'm just asking the wrong question. I mean, maybe they're not even. I don't know. I think they're targeting retail, right? So does XPR play into a role of the multi-chain future? Like, is this going to be something that XRP is going to use for the retail side, but not the institutional side? Is this something that Hedera is going to use for or their governance council? Like, how does this tie into the multi-chain?
Yeah. So, yeah, great question. So XPR, yes, it's actually, it's built more for retail, but they also have like the lending protocol is because it falls under this whole entire establishment of the Metallicus ecosystem and corporation. It falls under all of those regulation, all those compliant, right? So the lending protocol it can be used not just by retail, but it can be used by institutions, right? So you have Metal blockchain that's focused on the institutions. They're focused on the banks and the credit unions and whatnot, right? Where you have XPR, which is the main blockchain itself for Web3. So again, Metal, it's kind of like the surface layer where you're trying to connect with that. Metal is plugged into FedNow, right? It's plugged into the FedNow's API, and then you have on the second layer, right, which is the XPR, or not second layer, but the additional blockchain, which is XPR. Now they do have a layer 2, which is called MTL. Right, the Metal DAO token, that's going to help bring on that's the Ethereum virtual machine, that's the EVM compatibility in the bridge on that side, right? So as far as like, do I see XPR being up there in the top? Absolutely, 100%. I mean, if it's going to be one of the main DeFi protocols or one of the only DeFi protocol that has compliance. Right, all of these institutions are not going to come in and just all of a sudden start using Aave, right? Aave is not compliant, right? Aave is not BSA compliant, KYC, AML compliant, right? They're not just going to just throw their money in a bunch of liquidity pools and LP pools that are ran by a bunch of degens. That's not how it's going to work, right? But what they will do is that they will use a DeFi platform that is approved, right? And this is where we only have right now, it's only the lending protocol,
So,
right?
so in terms of the banks and the exchanges or even the institutions, they're responsible for handling the KYC themselves, especially when it comes to the settlement layer. In terms of like the XPR for onboarding the institutional adoption of it, are these entities going to? Do you think these entities are just going to hand off the KYC to kind of trust it on the KYC built into the chain? Or do you think that the banks, the institutions, due to regulations, will always handle and custody the responsibility of the KYC themselves?
So I don't think it's going to be like for that. It's going to be built within the WebAuth wallet. It's already built in within the WebAuth wallet. The WebAuth wallet, the WebAuth wallet is developed by Metallicus, right? Which is really the only KYC compliant blockchain. If you're very familiar, about a week ago or this past week or whatnot, where Google mentioned that if you're not KYC and AML compliant, they're going to start delisting your wallets, right? Again, that take that information as you please, right? And this goes for both, not just not just cold storage wallet, but hot wallets as well, cold and hot wallets, right? But with that being said, I believe that if you're gonna have a wallet, it has to be fit within those parameters of that KYC and AML compliance, right? Right now, it will be on that surface layer of WebAuth, right? And WebAuth, it's not like you're taking your WebAuth wallet and you're passing your ID over to XPR network. No, you onboard with your WebAuth wallet just like you would do with like your XRP Zamin wallet, right? Your XRP Zamin wallet, you can log into all of these different applications. Right, it's the same thing that will be happening here on this blockchain, right? It'll be WebAuth wallet, and you can log into all of these applications. And the same thing with, the thing is that WebAuth wallet you can add into any chain. Like for example, most recently there was a vote that was actually put in, and majority of the community members, they want XRP, the XRP native chain, to be added to the WebAuth wallet. So instead of it being a bridge, you can actually interact with the XRP ecosystem like the dApps straight from the WebAuth wallet.
That's a lot. That's a lot to bake in.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that information came out this past week. So I don't know when they're going to implement it fully, but eventually it will. I want to give a shout out to Bull and give a shout out to my homeboy Prepping Money. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people should be scared of what's about to happen, right? Because a lot of people get fear. What I've noticed is a lot of people are fearful what they don't know. And this is why we always tell people, hey, do your research, right? Because the more research that you do, the more confidence you're going to have. But then not just research, but actually getting your hand dirty, like utilizing the network, utilizing the ecosystem, right? People are very scared of using DeFi, for example, right? But the people that are scared of using it, they've never used it. So what are you scared of? The great thing is that unlike Ethereum, where you have to pay an arm and a leg for gas fees, right, to test out a transaction, you can do it with minimal, like literally pennies, to test it out so you can feel comfortable. They're not going to be unfortunately, we don't have a school like a traditional schooling system to teach people about this, right? But obviously the people that get in on this information start utilizing the protocols and stuff first. Not only do they have the understanding, acknowledgement, right? But they're the first ones in the gate. It's kind of like mining gold, right? The ones that started mining the gold was out there first, getting their hand dirty, are the ones that reap the most rewards. The same thing can happen. The same thing is happening now, right? So I encourage everybody to, don't take my word for anything I'm saying. I'm just an echo, you know what I'm saying?
Do you think that there's any specific narrative or distraction that's keeping the average investor from understanding the real purpose of blockchain tech?
No, and the reason why is because, and the reason why I say that is because people are already living their everyday lives right now, right? And it's already struggle. It's hard enough right now, right? The ones that really want to know and understand, they'll search the information. This is why we're on the spiritual journey, right? Everything is all spiritual, frequency, right? And I think that when the time is right, they'll learn. But they have to want to learn. This is what's going to separate the people that, again, the ones that reap the reward, the wealth before everybody else, right? Because we were the ones that we stayed locked in, or we continue to look at the information. And even though we questioned it, we never stopped, right? Versus the ones that, that didn't. And it's not being negative, right? Because I believe that, with the capabilities of internet, with AI and all this information out here, I mean, for Christ's sakes, you can put into the search bar here on TikTok and just put in cryptocurrency or how to crypto, right? And you can learn about it, right? But at the end of the day, we have free will. So, I don't believe that. I think the mainstream narrative was always supposed to be a distraction, but it was up for us to use our discernment to be like, hey, are we going to pay attention to that distraction, or are we going to go off and do our own thing? Majority of people stay locked into that distraction. Nothing wrong with that. You just won't reap the rewards. Like, you can't complain if, me, you, or anybody else, we make it big, right?
Well, I think it's important to pay attention to what the narrative is for mainstream. So if you do turn on the TV, you do open Twitter, if you even do type in cryptocurrency into the TikTok search bar, and you've never looked into this before, what is the average person who knows nothing hearing? They are hearing the hype train. They are being spoon-fed the hype train. That's your Bitcoin. That's your meme coins, right? All the volatility. This is what the average person is looking at. That is exactly what the narrative is. When you're looking at coins and projects that actually solve a real world problem, they're being interjected into central banks, whether that's CBDC sandboxes or even institutional adoption. You're not finding that. You really have to dig. So if you could red pill the fuck out of new crypto learners or even the world, what would that be?
Shoot, a lot. Shit. I would definitely say like without sounding boring, I would say finances. Because once you start understanding finances, like money, then you start questioning like, why the fuck are we in $37 trillion worth of debt, and how are we supposed to pay that back?
It's because we're slaves. That's why the system is built up for all of us to be slaves.
Yeah.
Whether we realize it or not. slaves. People think that slavery ended 200 years ago. It didn't end. Okay, people went up to work, they produced labor, and in exchange they got housing and food. The only thing that's different now is you have the illusion of freedom that you get to commute back to your housing. You get to choose the food that you want. Slavery is still very much in play, okay? You're a slave, I'm a slave, until we're not. You're a slave to the almighty dollar. And until you want to realize that, you're going to be interjected into the system. I think that most people, they walk around with these horse blinders on. Okay, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get good grades, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get out, I'm going to get a good job, put money in my 401k, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to get married. By the time I'm 30, I'm going to have $400,000 in debt, and then maybe when I'm 60, I get to go on vacation twice a year. And this is how people are programmed to live. People don't necessarily, they think that if they go to work for 40 hours a week, they're going to become financially free, or they're going to live up to that American dream in the United States. And that's just ultimately false. You have to come home from work and you have to do something. You have to do something else. You have to have multiple sources of income, because that is the only way that you have true freedom in this country, is to have financial freedom. It's to own 100% of your time. I say this to everybody that kind of listens to me, is that the goal is not to have X amount of millions, it's to own 100% of the time. The day that what's the point of wearing the Rolex if it's telling you when to take lunch break? The day that you wake up and you own 100% of the time, that's when you finally broke the shackles. But everybody's a slave. That's the way the system is built up. We're a slave to the dollar.
I think if people, like, instead of just sitting here saying, hey, I'm going to read the Bible or go to church every single Sunday, if they actually have a spiritual connection with God, right? And then they start being like, hey, how the fuck do I break free from this shit? Because God didn't create us to be slaves to the system. I wasn't born to be a slave. I don't give a shit. That's why I do everything I can to break out of that slavery system. As soon as I figured it out and woke up in 2020, I was like, all right, what the hell do I have to do to get out of this shit? And I think that, The Matrix definitely helped, the movie The Matrix helped, paint that for us to, like, start questioning that, yeah, the red pill versus blue pill, start questioning the real narrative that, that are out there, right? Now, again, in my opinion, right, going back to your original question where you're like, okay, well, the mainstream narrative, are they blocking people from learning crypto and stuff? I'm not necessarily, I don't think so. I think it's done in timing, right? Because, like, they're out there giving everybody the information. I mean, Trump sat there and said that, there's a crypto strategic reserve, right? I mean, people don't understand finances. They don't understand what that means, right? And that's, like, to me, I was like, as soon as that happened, it clicked. I mean, I already knew what it was, right? But it was like, holy shit, that was like the biggest moment in U.S. history, because you're legitimately putting crypto into a treasury. And when people understand what a treasury is, right, it's not just a word. No, it's a freaking chest, dude. It's a war chest, And when people figure out, like, finances, like, oh, what a treasury is really used for, then they can start applying that to real life scenario, right? Whether it's in your real life or business, right? Because whenever you own a business, you got to have a savings account, aka a treasury, right? So you can sustain your project, your ecosystem, your business, right? Stuff like that. People understand what revenue means, et cetera, stuff like that, right? Again, that's the reason why I say if I were to red pill somebody. But in the future, I don't believe that that's going to be the case, right? Because I think it's going to be kind of automated, right? Because, we've gone so, for people to understand, like, finances on a level like I do, you would have to erase a lot of things that you've already learned before, right? Oh, yeah. Or be in school for years. Yeah.
Especially being raised in a middle-class family or even a lower-class family, probably even harder. But you often find that parents, they typically pass down their knowledge of financial education. And I'm sure you're in the same boat as me, that our form of financial education all came from this. It all came from devoting time and self-learning and looking into questioning things and taking a look at the way that people have lived that American dream, right? Get a good job, 40 years here. And then you look at them and you're like, well, did they become successful? You start questioning, well, what is success? And that's all self-taught. And most people ultimately don't want to go down that road. They want to be distracted. They want to come home, look at what's on UFC. They want to watch Love Island. They want to go home, watch a movie, drink a couple beers. And, they don't want to work after work. And they're going to, you have to do the opposite of what the 99% are doing. You have to do what they're unwilling to do. which is to work, to learn. Think about how many people are on TikTok right now, scrolling, doom scrolling. How many people are in here listening to this? You know what I'm saying? This is the 99% to the 1%.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I believe that's the cool thing is that they see that, right? They see that majority of Americans scroll on TikTok, and they give us the ability to sell on TikTok now. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, you don't have no excuses to break out of the system. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody has that excuse. Hey, yeah, it might sound silly, but you were here on TikTok anyways. You might as well go ahead and make a video and just sell some pom-poms.
Do you often find that your spiritual beliefs kind of lead some decisions for you or influence your views with finance?
Absolutely.
Walk me through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I didn't believe in the spiritual war, right, good versus evil, and how dark the money is, it wouldn't have led me to the conviction and the beliefs I am right now, right, and holding on to the tokens that I do and understanding, like, connecting the infrastructure together on the system and how it's connected, right? Because I always said it again, I'm not sitting here saying that XRP doesn't play a big role. I'm still a big, gigantic XRP diehard, right? Christ, I got a gigantic tattoo on my forearm, right? But, to sit here and say that, that there's not other projects that are playing into this ecosystem is an understatement. And they all do it for the greater good of humanity, right? Because of this spiritual war we're going through, right? Again, when people get down deep and dirty and see, like, how dark the money really can get, then they're like, oh, snaps. Well, we don't want to be over there. How the hell do we get out of there, right? Well, this is why people like myself, you and other individuals that are very outspoken, right? Even though we came onto the spiritual beliefs of, like, hey, we understand that information, right? But we don't have time to cover that information, right? Not only because it's very sensitive, right? And we don't want to risk our getting banned. We try to get everybody onto the other side. What's the other side? Money. Because everybody's driven by money, unfortunately, right? That's just how the world runs right now, right? So you tell somebody that, hey, man, XRP can reach $10,000 and it's only $3. Chances of it, somebody's going to jump on that train. You know what I'm saying? Whether you intentionally, a lot of people might throw shade and be like, oh, you're just spilling rhetoric and stuff like that. No, I mean, I believe XRP will hit $10,000. I believe that other cryptos will hit very high prices. But my job is to try to get everybody to get over there, right? My job, personally, like spiritually, my job and what I feel like I was sent for is to get everybody over and get on the fucking arc, right?
I think it's more common than not, where you find a lot of people within this space, they have this tendency to have a spiritual connection. And I think you, as well as me, we kind of maybe have been pushed into this line of work, pushed into this vision, pushed into this aspect of speaking out online to complete strangers. Maybe take a risk or take a shot at something that can ultimately change our families' lives, our bloodline for generations to come. Now, I know that you believe that we're in a battle, not just for wealth, but for human prosperity. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the wealth was always here in America, right? And it was always here. It was always the people's wealth, right? Because that's what America was. You can think about, like, going back in history. Like, I to be honest with you, I never really liked history when I was in high school, right? I think it's because of the way they taught it to me, right? But I love history now. And when you start learning about, like, American history, why we came over here, why they say it's the people's land, right? That's why it's our wealth and how it was stolen from us. Then you start learning about how it was stolen from us and stuff like that. Then you become pissed because you're like, what the fuck, man? Why the hell am I working and have been working all these years to be a slave? Because then you wake up to be like, oh, I was a fucking slave the whole entire fucking time. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of people. They whenever they go down that route, right, of that spiritual wealth, then you start learning about wealth, right? You wake up to, oh my God, I'm a fucking slave, to being like, okay, well, how do I break out to be a slave? And you start learning that the only way to break out to be a slave is to actually attain wealth. Then you start looking at money differently. You don't start looking at money as far as like an everyday spending. No, you start buying things so you can accumulate wealth, so you can maintain your wealth, right? Even if a silver coin is $30, right? That's still wealth. You're not buying it as an investment. You're buying it to secure wealth because you know what silver is. You buy XRP or XPR or any of these digital assets, you're buying it because of wealth. You're buying it because of the utility, what it is, And, that shift of mindset, I think that when people start waking up to that fact, right, then they start, then they're already one step out of the overall matrix system that we're currently in, And it's not saying like, hey, people are not going to stay in the system because, we have free will, right? But as soon as, let's just say, for example, XRP starts doing some crazy numbers, right? That $3 XRP that they spend on $3 on, if it start going to $20, $30, $50, right? It doesn't become an investment. That's wealth then. And then people's mindsets start changing. Literally, it will happen, right? It will happen naturally, right? And I love the fact that you brought up meme coins earlier, right? Because a lot of people that made it big in the last bull run, especially some really good friends of mine, right? That are big XRP bag holders, right? A lot of them made their wealth because of meme coins, because they got onboarded through meme coins, as silly as it sounds, right? And I'm not trying to be like, hey, meme coins are the way, right? But, everybody a lot of people in this world, they work a 9 to 5, right? So the last thing they want to do is learn how real utility works. But funny enough, if you ask them like, hey, do you know how this new financial system is changing? They're going to be like, no. But then you ask them, do you know about Dogecoin? They're like, yeah, I have Doge. I know about Dogecoin. I have some.
Well, I would think you, out of anybody, would be the guy to kind of push the utility more so than the memes, because you do see the new ushering in of the financial system. And I think that you have a very unique skill of grabbing the attention of viewers and kind of explaining it to people who necessarily don't understand. But you and I can both agree that, yes, many people got rich from meme coins. This cycle is the utility run. This is the institutional adoption run. This is the time where you can't necessarily look at the last cycle and go, okay, well, meme coins had the run once we blend into altcoin season. This is a completely different cycle. And I think you understand it better than maybe just anybody else out there, that this is the utility run.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to take. Okay, so I think meme coins have been given a bad rep for sure, right? And this is where I believe that KYC and AML compliance will come in, and it'll stop a lot of that, right? Because if you're the one sitting here pulling all these rug pulls and everything, right, you're not going to be doing that on a KYC and AML compliant platform, and if you do, you're not going to be there much longer. Right. So I think that the idea around meme coins, they can have utility too. I spent a few months, a little bit over on the XRPL and the meme coin side of space to learn about that. Right. Because to me, I think the idea meme coins should be evolved. It should literally be evolved to community driven projects instead of saying meme coin. Right. Meme coin is just a logo. It's just literally a logo. But in the background, if the meme coin has true utility, it would be a community helping community initiative behind it. So, but a lot of times it's just brand recognition, right? So, for example, right, and I'm not saying that meme coins cannot be fun or you can't make money on them, because there have been a lot of people, including myself, that have made quite a bit of money on them. But for the pure fact of the matter is that there can be utility behind any token, right? XRP used to be a meme coin. It literally, was created as it was a meme coin, and then there's utility now behind it, right? There would not the intentions.
You have to walk me through that. You're gonna have to walk me through that. Start with open coin.
So every coin, including Bitcoin, is a meme coin, right? Every coin, because it was just an idea, and then it evolved. It gave utility behind it and upgrades to the utility, so on. right? It's never stopping. So every coin that we have right now legitimately turns out to be a meme coin. What creates it, separates it from not being a meme coin, not just because it's a logo, right? It's the community behind it to push that initiative, right? So, for example, why you ask like Dogecoin, why it's in the top 10, right? It has no utility. Well, what if I told you that it does? What if I told you that on the new DAO protocol, right, that you have Dogecoin, it gives you a vote? You know, it gives you a vote, like it has true utility now, right? So again, everything can start out as a meme, but there can evolve into over time to have utility in the future, right?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with the idea that it started out as a meme. Like if you look at the first ever DLT white paper, you write your Bitcoin decentralized peer-to-peer cash system. That's the utility in it. Just because maybe it started out with the community, the retail side, before the institutions came in to actually utilize the tech. Ultimately, that gap between the two would be incoming regulations. But just because the retail was kind of the ones to adopt it and to start to get things going and the community was driven, I don't know if I would necessarily consider it a meme coin.
No, well, I'm not labeling it as a meme coin right now. I'm saying that everything started out as a meme. Right? There was just an idea. A meme is just an idea, right? And then it evolves. That's how I see it. It's like a meme is just an idea. And then you take that idea and then you evolve it to something else. You bring it to the next level. You attach something more to it.
I would maybe agree with you. Like you said earlier, if you wanted to replace meme with a community-driven coin, if that's kind of where you're going with it, then I would kind of agree with you, because it was really the community. Retail got in before the institutions, kind of the community that started to drive the attention to it. That I could probably agree with you on.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of projects that are out there that they're meme coins, right? And they have utility behind it. There's not a lot of people that talk about them, right? Because, you know, in the meme coin space, they're getting a lot of bad rep, right? But I believe that if people, instead of thinking about like, you know, about meme coins, that they hopefully in the future, which let me say hopefully it will happen, right? Because we'll look back on like this live, right, and we'll be like, oh snap, you know, did you get get in on this token, right? And it might be like a token, like of a like a water droplet or something like that. And next thing you know, the initiative behind it, right, is actually to give water, to help filter water throughout the world. And it was a community that helped drive that project. But it started out as just a silly meme because it helped attract people. It's a brand, right? It's just a logo. That's all it is, right? But eventually, just like any great business or any business, right? They have their logo, they have their brand, they have their mascot, right? So I think about it kind of like that kind of like aspect, right? Again, it will evolve over time. I'm not saying that overnight, right? And I'm not definitely telling anybody to go and invest in the meme coins if you don't feel froggy to, right? I like meme coins because, hey, man, you get what I'm saying? 5% of my portfolio to throw it in there, and next thing you know, if it can 100x, shit, I'm all for it. I'm not sitting here throwing 100% of my portfolio into some damn meme coin. Shit, I still know it's still gambling. I ain't dumb. You know what I'm saying? Anybody that doesn't believe that is freaking dumb. But I believe that, to sit there and restrict people from being able to get in on it, it's kind of like it's the opposite, right? Because then it'll be centralized, right? Because then you're telling people don't get in. That's central. You're not giving people the freedom to do it. Hey, we have free will. Let them do it if they want to. Unfortunately, yes, there will be learning curves and growing pains in the space, right? But people will learn quickly. You get what I'm saying? People will learn quickly. Either they're going to stay in or stay out, right? But with that being said, though, if they stay in, right, the chances of it, not only will they stay in and they'll be part of that community, but they'll grow together and they'll learn, right? And as they learn, they'll learn that it's just much more than just sitting here just buying and flipping meme coins. No, there's a reason why you're in that position in the first place, right? Then they start thinking back to, oh, this is a spiritual journey, or they'll probably figure out like if they hit it big, right? Again, I know people that made, millions of dollars on meme coins, and it transformed into it being a spiritual journey for them, even though they made it big, right? But they took that money and they put it right back to the greater good of humanity, right? So that's how it can evolve, and I hope that people can see that one day, right? That people will, because the reason why I say that is because the CEO of Coinbase, he's the one who brought it up, right? He was just like, look, I'm not sitting here telling anybody that meme coins aren't bad, right? Because meme coins are a lot of pump and dumps and stuff like that. But, to sit there and say that there aren't legit community-driven projects out there that are actually trying, right, you're literally ignoring that fact, right? But will it take time for that to wash out? Absolutely, 100%. Right. This is why I believe that KYC and AML compliance will play a big role into meme coin space.
Yeah, I think regulations are ultimately going to dictate what's here to stay for the 10, 15 years and what's not. I kind of think that a majority of your meme coins or your assets that are issued without there being any kind of entity behind it or any corporation or anything to that nature behind it, I don't know how they're going to comply with the regulations. But we got about 10 minutes left in the live. If I could, I'd like to go through some rapid questions.
What's up, bro?
First crypto you ever bought?
Ethereum.
Me too. I'm gonna change this one up because it's a little bit more relevant. XRP or XPR if you could only hold one. On the spot.
I would have to say XRP.
Oof. It's sweating there a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Most underrated crypto project right now.
Oh shit. I would have to say most underrated crypto project right now. Ethereum.
Wow. Okay, I'll look into that.
AFR. Ethereum. AFR.
What
on a Stellar blockchain.
What is one flag that tells you that a project is a trap?
Oh shit. One project that it is a trap.
No, what's the red flag?
Well, one red flag is most importantly, if it just doesn't have a white paper, or just doesn't have a fucking, a roadmap.
Oh yeah. Biggest distraction in crypto right now.
Fucking QFS.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
The biggest distraction of all, bro.
Okay.
XRP gonna be backed by gold.
This one I think is a little interesting because I think that we are going into both of these directions, but DeFi or a dystopian controlled CBDC future, which one are we heading towards?
Oh, DeFi.
Is the dollar dead?
Absolutely. The Federal Reserve note is dead, been dead. That's why we're going into a treasury dollar.
Truth or comfort, which one do you choose?
Truth.
I would hope so, because echo the truth. Do you have one book or a documentary or a video that you would recommend to wake people up?
Yeah. I would definitely say Changing World Orders by Ray Dalio. Like, if you have not read that book, that's one book you have to 100% read. That would help wake you up because it's happening right fucking now. Like, literally, we're at the end game. He put that book out like 3 years ago, like knowing exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. And I know that a lot of people don't like to read. There is actually an audio book on YouTube too. But yeah, The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. Now, with that being said, right, he talks about the changing world order, but he doesn't talk about us going into a treasury dollar. That's kind of like the continuous of, the solution. But he talks about it, right? He talks about the inflation, talks about the history of the money, right? It would legitimately wake people up now, because that's kind of like you're talking about, the guy who built the world's largest, hedge fund, from his basement. So he knows what the F he's talking about.
God, freedom, family. What is the order for you in terms of importance?
Oh, I mean, God, family, and freedom. I mean, yeah.
Bull market or bear market? What makes better investors or traders?
I mean, bull market. Okay, let me take it back. Bear market will help if you be a better trader, right? Because in a bull market, a lot of people, and I had that to myself, right, where you continuously go up and you don't take profits. And so you that case, you don't learn how to trade properly, right? But in a bear market, you'll learn how to trade because you want to get out of those damn positions, and you'll look for those patterns. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
That's tie in great to the next question. Patience, patience versus discipline. Which one is harder to master?
patience, 100% patience. Yeah,
Interesting.
especially if you're here in crypto, because if you're in crypto, right? Especially if you were an XRP holder, anybody would know that, right? That we've held on to XRP for as long as we had, or cryptos, and understanding that this whole entire changing of this monetary system, and we woke up at certain periods of time, right? Again, you and I started back in 2020, so you're talking about 5 years of patience, right? Do I want it to happen tomorrow? Absolutely. I think a lot of us do, right? But ultimately, patience is key. And I think that we're going to, no matter where we're at, right, a lot of us are going to reap the rewards. So, yeah, patience, 100%.
Patience as well. Yeah, I think both of them are like emotional discipline or emotional stoicism. What's your morning routine? Is it chart first or coffee first?
Oh, coffee, absolutely. I don't even look at the chart, bro.
Coffee before you're looking at the charts.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't look at the charts. I don't. I mean, because the reason why is because I don't have to trade right now, right? Back in the days, and if a really good trading opportunity happens, right, I'll set it up. But for the most part, I'm not sitting here trying to trade the charts, right? I have a lot of my assets in DeFi, right? I know where we're going. Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm not a professional trader. Now, do I know how to use the Fibonacci retracement level? If I trade, it's a long-term trading perspective, right? I don't leverage, right? Because, leveraging is the fastest way to liquidate your portfolio, right? Because we're still human, right? And if you don't have that patience, right, you're going to end up over leveraging yourself. And that, again, the fastest way to liquidate your portfolio, right? So for me, I'd rather spend my time building, being in the meetings with all of these different projects, helping the infrastructure. I've been spending a lot of time coding, right, and learning how to code, right. So in that case, again, I believe that, trading, in the very near future, we're going to set it up in a way that AI is just going to do it for us, that we're just going to be like, hey, make me 10% every single day. Bing, bing. Here's my wallet. And it's going to do it for us. And then we can go and spend our time doing something elsewhere, right? Because, again, I used to trade, right? But it got to a point where, I don't really care about trading. I don't need to, it doesn't give me that rush anymore. Right. I know I'd rather spend more time learning about the technology and utilizing the technology rather than just staring at the chart all day.
I love that because I'm in the same boat with you. What is one quote that you live by?
Know what you hold.
We really should have talked about that.
No,
I had that written in there and what exactly that means to you, but it's pretty self-explanatory. What is the funniest comment on TikTok or X?
Oh, funny comment? Yeah, shit, I can't remember. Probably by Marshall Hayner. Before he followed me, right? And he sat there and said, "I would never own Fuzzy. That's trash."
And you're sitting there like,
and he follows me and I'm a Fuzzy, and he follows Aquaman, and Aquaman has a Fuzzy as his PFP character, and we're both in that ecosystem.
Echo, do you have any closing thoughts or anything that you'd like to get out to both of our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, just never stop learning. Just because, just because, don't, if you feel comfortable, make yourself uncomfortable. Like for real, like if you feel comfortable, then make yourself uncomfortable. You're not, we weren't, we were, if you feel, okay, look, if you're still waking up every single effing day, 9 to 5, got to do a damn routine, right? And you're not living the way that you want to live, then you're living comfortably, right? You're supposed to be, we have free will to break out of this, right? So never stop learning. You cannot sit here and say you learned enough because god dang, bro, even the fucking richest of all richest people, they're still learning, right? So never stop learning and never stop building, right? Whether it is building your wealth, building a business, building your foundation, have a sense of purpose, again, I sat there, I never coded a damn day in my fucking life, ever, right? And yesterday, I sat there for over 8 hours fucking writing 200 lines of code with AI, right? And now I can track, now in the Discord, right? I track the U.S. national debt in real time. I coded that into my Discord. I'm like, bro, the reason why I did that was because everybody came up to me and was like, U.S. national debt's not real. Who runs it? I'm like, well, you want to know what? It's not. I was like, you don't think it's real, but I'm going to sit here and code it all and get to the sources of it so I know how it's done. And so I can give more confidence, right? And that was my very first bot I've ever coded, right? And I did it. So
no, that's definitely not easy, and that's a big achievement, bro. Congratulations.
Exactly, and I was uncomfortable, right? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I spent damn near 8 hours coding this mother effer, bro. And I was going to stop. I mean, literally halfway through, I was going to stop because it just kept on coming up, like, not coming up, registering and stuff like that. Or I was running into a roadblock, and I was like, no, I'm determined to get this on my freaking Discord. And yeah, it's now just chilling on my Discord. You put in there, what's called exclamation point debt inside the chat, and not only is it registering it in real time on the side, right, where it has the username, but if you pull it up, it'll give you all of the additional information. And now I can start plugging in from that base. Now I can start plugging in other information now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that definitely couldn't have been easy, even with the AI included into it. That's something pretty unique, dude.
Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. Yeah. So I mean, again, anybody that's out there, never stop learning.
Yeah. No. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you coming back, and we'll have to run this up another time, bro.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, make sure you grab your bag of loan and yeah. Make sure you grab a bag of loan, bro.
We're still researching everything. But yeah, no, thank you so much for taking the time and as well as my audience, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Have a good one.
All right, brother. Good night.
Take care.